Get into it. Welcome, guys, for another episode of the Group Up Podcast. We're here for the great May debate, and we have a lot to discuss. We are going to be talking about the new patch, the Orisa Killer patch, then the Orisa Reviver patch, potentially that the director's take is announced, where tanks are going to be getting giga buffs, and has already caused much alarm in the Overwatch community as any major change does. Before we get into any of that, let me introduce my guests. In the bottom right is my man Yeatle, currently working his way through a ball on rank to GM. How you doing, Yeatle?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Hope you're doing great too.
That was fire.
I am. I am. And one sec, that reminds me to mute my alerts while I introduce in the bottom left. I think you're plotting some sort of rank to GM yourself, aren't you, Bogur? You're the villain of Reddit.
Okay, why am I the villain of Reddit? What did I do, bro? Kiriko mains don't like me because I said Kiriko is maybe a little bit overtuned, and they're like, "Whoa, right? So the streamer guy now said that Kiriko is not good, and now our character is gonna get nerfed. She doesn't deserve it." I was like, "Are you okay? Are you normal? This character has been meta for 90% of Overwatch 2." Hi, my name is Bogur. I play Overwatch.
And
Sometimes tank.
You are not solely responsible for the balance of Overwatch, despite what Reddit says.
I don't think they care about my opinion. I just tweeted that in the heat of the moment. I was like, damn, this character is annoying as hell. Maybe I should tweet something. People were like, what?
I always remember the one forum post that I think Bogur read as well, where it was like after one of the podcasts, and they were, I think Bogur and Samito were like ranting on supports, and the forum poster was like, this Samito and quote unquote Bogur, they think that they're so smart. And I was like, why is Bogur in quotes? His name is Bogur. Like, that part isn't, that's not the fake part. Like, you can reject his opinion, but he really is Bogur. And he really is.
Can I
Yeah, go ahead.
say something? I had a dream about you, Custa.
Me? Oh,
yeah, I had a dream. I had a dream. I had a dream that I went to Australia and you and Avro picked me up from the airport, and then and we went somewhere, and then I had to play my Overwatch CS match, but it was on EU time, and I asked you, can I play on your PC at 4 a.m.? Because that was when the match was going to happen. Just a random thing.
Hell yeah. This guy's so OWCS build, he's fucking flying to Australia in his dreams to play.
Literally. You gotta dream bigger, Bogur. Literally, you gotta dream bigger.
Team Schmungus might win. We might win one match next time.
That's the goals. That's the goals. Well, what better intro could you ask for than a guest appearance in Bogur's dreams? Much more prestigious than a guest appearance on this podcast. But welcome, Custa.
Yeah, hello. Good to be here. I'm Custa. I do esports shit for Overwatch sometimes. I'm a streamer. Hello. I am the if you are here and hate watching because you hate Bogur, I'm here to be your support because I am the support player and I will defend our rights. And I'm actually here. I don't know if SVB did this intentionally, because I was like, who am I on the podcast with? He's like, you're on with Bogur and Yeatle. I'm like, right. So I'm on the defensive against the tanks in this episode. So that's my job for today.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah. See, everyone thinks I'm a clown, but I planned these shits. You know, I know what I'm doing. I was watching your stream and you were just like very unsympathetic towards tank players, and I was like, all right, let this man cook.
I'm done with him.
Let this man cook. So we will do some cooking, but first, as we always do, we're gonna go with opening thoughts and just how my guests are feeling about the state of Overwatch right now. So just a couple sentence summary. How you feeling about Overwatch right now? We'll start with Yeatle. Yeatle, how you feeling about Overwatch?
I'm okay with it. I'm cool. Just balling out. Been one tricking ball this whole season. I mean, it's as good as you'd expect. I'll tell you what though, I do think that like the start of the season picked off a little bit weak, you know? Like with balance changes, they went a little bit weak. So this season doesn't feel as like, whoa, right off the rip. That's how I'm feeling about it right now.
Yeah, definitely. There's been a missed hype train, I think. Like, people were very excited by some of the new changes, but it feels like the community has been a little bit underwhelmed by this what's happened in Season 10. Is that fair, Yeatle?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
All right. Well, Bogur, how about you? How have you found the current season?
I'm so bored.
You're bored?
I'm so bored. You don't understand. I think Blizzard really relies on just the hero to be enough to spice up a season, but it's not. And the fact that there was barely any changes on this patch this season kind of made the launch really kind of boring because this is the same meta. I like the Orisa nerf. I don't like the Venture nerf too much, but I don't think it matters too much. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel kind of bored. I like when there's big balance patches because it freshens up things. Everyone's gonna complain about something, but I don't know, just venture in itself was not enough for me personally to be engaged.
That's fair. Custa, have you felt the boredom? Have you felt like it wasn't enough?
I think pretty much everyone, at least at the top end, feels the same way. Of like they didn't touch any of the problematic things at the top rank. Obviously, they just hit Orisa, which is nice, but it doesn't really feel like it solved a lot of the other issues that we're kind of dealing with. So it feels like we're running into the same thing over and over again a little bit. So I don't know. Like I agree. It's kind of that issue. It's like they wanted it to be carried by the new hero, but the new hero didn't really change anything up. Like you can slot Venture in here or there, but it's not like that big of a deal. But for the most part, the games are just playing the same way. And then you pair that with the matchmaking issues that happened in season 10. I think that's dramatically affected like a lot of match quality across the board. Can't duo as much. So I think that's the game's the same, but the matchmaking got worse. So I think that's led to negative sentiment to the season.
Yeah.
Yeah,
said.
but you agree with the matchmaking thing, and so does Yeatle.
I agree. I think the matchmaking really, I like at the beginning of the season, I think matchmaking really killed off a lot of hype because a lot of streamers and a lot of pro players just were stuck in queue when duo queuing. I saw New, he's from Australia, I think. Maybe Custa knows him.
Yep,
I think
my man.
yep. He was in queue for like what 10 hours or something. It was great.
Oh, it was more than
And
that. It went to like
yeah,
18, I think, in the end.
it was insane. So I think that kind of killed off the hype. But they fixed it. One thing that they do a lot better than before is that they actually address issues instantly or almost instantly. It doesn't take them like 2 months to fix something.
Yeah, there's a lot to get into with that kind of stuff. I mean, we'll definitely talk about community sentiment, especially when we talk about the director's take. 'Cause I think that it's been a lot of discussion recently about, as there always is, about how the devs have been handling things, and of course the sentiment has been growing for a while of like, oh, just go back to Overwatch 1, man. Like, we're just fucking everything up. Let's just go back to how it was. So we'll talk about all of that, and we'll get into. I can tell by the deep sighs and the smiles and the shakes of the heads that there's a lot of feelings that I will definitely dive into. But let's just start with the basics, and that is the recent patch that you guys have spoken about. So let's talk about what this patch has done and what it can do and what it might do to shake up the experience. So you guys said that the game has felt kind of boring and samey. Well, firstly, Orisa fortified duration reduced from 4.5 to 3.5 seconds. Orisa now moves 20% slower while fortified, and her javelin spin cooldown increased from 7 to 9 seconds. How has this affected it? Is this the Orisa killer? Bogur, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I feel like I can play other characters, but I don't think Reese is fully dead. But in terms of tank, you don't have to one trick Reese anymore. So I've been seeing a lot of Queen and stuff. So I think the Reese nerf was great. There was one player that like just a random player that said, oh, we should nerf fortify and javelin spin, and he called it perfectly. They exactly did that. I think it was Derpy, the whole drama they were there. Yeah, so he called it perfectly. That was funny. So I think this is a good change. I don't agree with the venture change necessarily because I think it's okay. People will disagree with me because low rank people are gonna be like, "Oh yeah, I just died to venture
we'll
every
talk
fight."
about that. We'll talk about that.
Okay,
We'll
just the
dedicate-
Orisa one.
Yeah.
But Orisa, very good. Plus 1.
Okay, I'll go to the tanks first. I'm gonna go Yeatle, and then I'll let Custa unleash hell. But Yeatle, is this good change? Was this needed as a change?
Absolutely. I feel like there was a lot of Risa almost like every game or every other game. So it's good to see her get chopped now. I mean, only problem is I don't know if it's happening for you guys. It's probably because I'm playing ball, but I get a lot more hog now because they're not scared of getting, countered by a Risa. But I think it's the greater good. I'd like to see less Orisa. It's been Orisa for a while. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have tried that fortify change. Like she walks so slow when she fortifies now. It's pretty bad. But for the time being, good. And I think mid-season she probably won't be as bad when they do the later changes.
Hello guys, SEB here, and the Group Up podcast is back, and I'd like to take just 30 seconds of your time to talk to you about 2 quick things. Firstly, Patreon. If you enjoy the content, then please do consider supporting directly, because Patreon takes only about 10% of the money you give, where YouTube and Twitch take 40 and 50% respectively. So if you'd like to support the podcast, then that is the best way to do so. Secondly, if you're someone who enjoys video essays or detailed analysis of movies, TV, or anime, then please do check out my second channel, The Soak, where I'll be making videos about those kind of topics much more frequently, and where a lot of my attention will go beyond just Overwatch. It would mean the absolute world to me if you guys would check it out, but that's it for now. Let's head back to the discussion. Custa, what about you? Are you sympathetic, unsympathetic? Are you just like, what are these tank players whining about, this Orisa stuff?
Well, no, here's my frustration because the tank whining, it's just incessant. But the problem that I have now is that tank players, they go, oh my God, I had to play Orisa so much. And then like Orisa gets sent to the glue factory. And then they're like, oh no, now I have to play Roadhog all the time. And they just play Roadhog and they just fucking walk around and then complaining about getting shot more. Like, I don't know, play something fucking different. Just be like Yeatle. That should be your motto. Be like Yeatle. Play something else. Play a Bull or play a Doomfist or play a Dive Hero. I think people are just defaulting to Roadhog because I think it plays the most similar to Orisa, and I think a lot of people are trying to like stick with what's going on. And Roadhog also just doesn't die in certain situations. So I don't know. It's been okay. Like I think it's just nice to see diversity. Whenever you see a heavy meta tank go out of the meta, you see a lot of people try different things, but it does feel like a lot of them are defaulting to Roadhog, which makes me want to slam my head against the wall sometimes. So.
Yeah, I'm sure some sections of the community probably like, well, you guys are never happy. Whatever's meta, as kind of Custa alludes to, we're just never happy to something. Whatever's meta, we're upset. I do think there's a little bit of having their cake and eating it too amongst tanks players, which is that they will complain about the brainless heroes, but they will play the brainless heroes even when they don't need to. And I always give the example, like you'll be in a game, and I'm playing like Winston, and then the other guy will like run into spawn and pick Malga. Like he'll be fine. He'll be on a fine hero pick, right? He'll be Winston Mirror, even playing Diva, and then like he starts losing. He's gonna run straight into spawn, pick Malga, and then later he'll come into the chat after game and be like, "Sorry for picking Malga, man. It sucks, doesn't it?" No, like no, don't turn this into like a. Don't be like, "Oh man, it sucks to be a tank." You fucking opted into the brainless ass pick, and you started the whole chain of the counter swapping. So I think there's a lot of tank players who start the counter swapping chain when they're losing, and then they complain about the counter swapping change when it kind of beats them. I'm a bit of an anomaly where I'm always like, honor, die with honor. I will lose with honor. I will not play Malga. I will not play Hog. I will not play Orisa. I don't care if it's the bad pick. Lose with honor. I think Yeatle is somewhere from the same school. Bogur, How do you feel? How do you feel? Have you felt like you're freer now to pick the things you want to pick, or is it still like I am in a jail of some description?
I think I feel a lot more free playing what I want. I think Winston's quite good right now, to be honest, depending on the map and the comp. So I also agree with Custa that maybe tank players complain a little bit too much about things. I think people like every role likes to complain that their role is the worst, and nobody likes to do anything to adapt. They all just complain together. But I like the Orisa change, and to be fair, Orisa was played 90% of the time in high elo, so this is most welcome. I like diversity. I think it's good.
I think the thing that made Orisa and let them send it to the glue factory as well is because I think it was also really strong in low elo. I think one of the big issues that we have when we talk about these things at high elos is like Kiriko is a great example where Kiriko is really strong at high elos, but I don't think is as strong at low elos. So it's kind of like a hard thing to balance. But I think Orisa across the board was just like oppressive across all ranks.
You could always pick Orisa and get value. Like
yeah,
you could
100%.
kill stuff with Javelin. You could stay immortal for a long time. And in high elo, I feel like a lot of gameplay on Orisa just revolved around staying alive as long as you can. And that was kind of boring, not gonna lie. And in low elo, you can just kill the enemy team and never die. So I think Orisa was just strong everywhere. So that's why they obviously, nerfed her.
Yeah, is that the key to her strength in Yeatle? Was that just she just was the good inoffensive tank to pick at all times?
Oh yeah, it was 100% just that like it's hard to find a punish window, especially like in lower elo of like when can I kill the Orisa? She has spin. Oh, now she has fortify again, and it just keeps rotating. But now she can't go as aggressive with it as well as not as often. So I think, yeah, Orisa. Sorry, what was the question again?
Is that why she was so good and why she was so picked so much? If we were talking 90% win rate, is that or pick rate? Is that why? Why?
Oh yeah.
What is your assessment of it?
Yeah, it was just pretty much because she lived forever.
Mm-hmm.
It was that.
Okay. And
it was also the fact that there was no bad situation to pick Orisa, except maybe Gibraltar. But even then, you can play. It's just no bad situation to play Orisa.
Yeah, and I guess that's the whole appeal of it, right? It's just like there's nothing that could put her in a bad spot. I am curious though, because in the last podcast we kind of we talked about Orisa a little bit deeper, so people were a little bit unhinged already. They're already on their rants, and the kind of conclusion that came was like, fuck Orisa, fuck Malga, fuck Hog, like put these characters in the dumpster and just like send them to the farm. I'm curious, Custa, if you believe in the tank hierarchy. Do you feel like there is this sort of order of what we should allow as a good and meta tank versus not, or are you thinking that like we can't pick favorites like that? We just have to like go with balancing everything.
Here's the thing. I don't think you should have favorites. Every hero, in my opinion, should have their time in the sun, and I think they do a good job of like buffing things till they get to that point, and then they have their time in the sun. The reason those three are specifically isolated is we went from a hog meta to a Malga meta to an Orisa meta, and I think the frustration with those three metas especially is they play very similarly. Of it's like everyone's gonna pack around the tank, we're gonna put all our resource into the tank, and then we're just gonna fucking walk at people, right? And then get one shot by Sojourn. So it's like that's the frustration that I have with like if we went from Roadhog to Winston to Orisa, I don't think we'd be having this discussion as much. But it's just because it feels like we've been doing the same thing over and over again a little bit. I think Hog should just like never be hard meta. I think he should get like the Moira treatment where it's like this hero is never going to be that good, but is always going to be like a choice. And I am a huge advocate for the 20% DPS passive. I think it hurts those heroes the most, and I think it dissuades those kind of picks the most. But I'm a little worried with the changes, how that's going to affect everything going into the mid-season patch.
Can I interject about the DPS passive? I don't understand why all tank players complain that this has ruined their game. Like, I don't even notice it. Like, I have seen so many tank players be like, "Oh my god, they ruined my. I can't play tank anymore. 5% more anti-healing. That's it." I was like, bro, relax. I bet that's not why you're losing games.
Yeah,
Well,
people like to use it as an excuse.
They use
Yeah,
everything as an excuse.
Yes, people suck. We know this. People definitely suck. I think it's definitely one of those things where if you are already playing around the way you do, Bogur, you would be playing around like, okay, I can't take damage right now, or I can only anticipate taking this much damage. You're not necessarily like, I'm expecting my support to bail me out, whereas I guess a lot of these people complaining are like, I mean, they may not even actually be perceiving the 5%, but they're expecting their supports to bail them out of a bad situation, and then they complain that they're like, I didn't get healed enough. And it's like, well...
Never rely on your teammates. Always on yourself.
Very true. There you go.
True.
That's genuinely true advice. True based advice from Bogur. Yeatle, have you? Let's talk about the DPS passive. I think that affects tanks more than any other role. And while we're on the tank subject, like, have you felt the presence of the extra 5%? Do you think it was a good change?
Honestly, I haven't noticed a 5% difference, but I think it's a great change. I like it because I'm biased and I like dive. And I think whenever there's a DPS passive, when it's buffed to 20% again, it makes dive a little bit better because it's about the supports not being able to heal as much, right? So they can't heal each other as well. So I think it's great because I think it's good for diving.
Yeah.
That's my take.
And Custa,
It
you
just
again?
doesn't affect those heroes. Like, yeah, like I think that's the big thing that a lot of tanks don't talk about. Like the reason I'm saying like play Doomfist, play Wrecking Ball, play Winston, is those heroes aren't affected by the DPS passive as much because they're not as dependent on healing, right? So I think we could probably I'd be interested to get your takes. Do you guys think Winston is the strongest tank in the roster right now? If played with a proper in coordination with your team, do you think he's the best tank in the game right now?
It really depends on the map.
Yeah.
Like there's maps where you cannot play Winston.
Yeah.
But I think that's the saving grace about Winston, because if that wasn't the case, maybe in pro play, not in ranked, in pro play, I think Winston would be one of the strongest tanks.
Yeah, I think if we go like this, OWCS, it will be fully Winston. And I think that's like, I think the big issue between that is it's like Winston is good. It's just every tank player I've talked to who's tried to play Winston ranked, they're like, I jump in, my team doesn't follow me, and I fucking die. And then their tank goes like Roadhog, and I just lose the game. So I think that's a lot of frustration there as well.
Yeah, but
That's
in
a great
ranked, like getting value in Winston is a lot harder than in team play. In team play, your team plays around you. You get Suzut, they know what to do. They match the Tracer. Speaking of Winston, I think Winston is going to be 10 times better after the tank changes. Because I know it's not that time yet, but especially because of the armor changes, he's not going to get poked by Tracer, by Reapers, by Diva. Diva would barely do damage to him, right? So I think it's a big winner. Anyways, I think Winston is really good right now. I agree.
A bit of foreboding for Bogur. Yeatle, how do you feel?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the story with all the dive tanks is in ranked. If you don't have follow-up, you're probably not going to kill anything. Like, I learned this story over and over. They're running the right comp, and I dive. There's nothing I could do to kill anybody. So
I think Doomfist is the best dive tank in ranked, because you can kill stuff.
Yeah.
I think he's a pop stomper for sure, but in team play, Winston's better.
Hmm.
Yeah, Doom just doesn't offer as much for his team in that sense. Like the bubble is
It's just a bubble.
amazing. It's
The
just
bubble.
amazing.
And Primal. The thing is, Winston has one of the best ults in the game in pro play, right? Primal is just so good, right? And the bubble is just so important as well. So
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I do think Doomfist is the pick I would gravitate towards when I'm like, okay, my teammates they're fucking clueless. I'm going Doom. Because also, if the game is dumb, Doomfist also is better there because like the way he works is the empowered block relies on the enemy team to shoot it. So if you're like, this is a really dumb lobby and people are doing really dumb shit, they'll probably shoot your gauntlet and then you punch the crap out of them. And then they're like, somebody kill the Doomfist, and nobody's killing the Doomfist.
I think the big issue with Doomfist, and I notice this more maybe than you guys do as a support, like I will probably call it in the first 30 seconds whether or not this Doomfist sucks or not. Because it's like their first dive is a pretty good gauge of like, does this guy know how to cycle his shit? Because Doomfist is a very difficult hero, especially as you go more up the ranks. And I think that's the frustration that a lot of like NA players, they're like, why would I try and just like over excel at Doomfist when I can just play Roadhog and just probably get equivalent value? Even though I'm not diving, like I can just hook people and win the game.
I think you were talking about like people should be playing Doomfist and stuff, and Winston. I think and Ball. I think those characters are really difficult to play, and that's why they don't play it. So I agree with you. I think it's way easier to get value on Roadhog or Malga or Orisa. So why would you gravitate towards the other characters when you can just pick Hog and like kill the entire team?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the frustration with why people were so upset about Roadhog, Orisa, and Malga, right? Is just because it's understandable in a rank situation if you have, let's say Widowmaker, or let's take it away from the tanks for a second. It's like if you could hit every shot on Widowmaker, there'd be no reason not to play Widowmaker. You can one-shot everybody, but the execution required to do that is nigh on impossible. Even if you had hacks, it might not be possible to hit every headshot. So instead you gravitate towards, well, this hero is reliable 90% of the time. Like I can't hit every headshot, but even if I body shot, this hero will get a lot of value. And it's the same with the tanks, right? It's like, well, the execution required to play Doomfist perfectly is just like so high, and even Ball is just so high that like the frustration remains that with Roadhog, you can just do that and whiff hook after hook after hook after hook. But if one of 4 connects, it's still a kill, and you're not losing out on value in the rest of the time. And I think that's where people's frustration comes from. There's a wider question I want to discuss. Is there anything else anyone else wants to add on that? But there's like a bigger picture question I do want to discuss. Bogur, you raised your hand a little bit.
No, I was just saying.
Okay, you were just gesturing something. Yeatle, anything you want to add?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so the wider question I wanted to ask is that you guys are talking about the DPS passive and healing in Overwatch, and I think this is going to be a growing discussion as Marvel's Rivals comes out. Because I don't know if you guys saw, but they released like a trailer for a map, and it just looked like Overwatch. I know there were some people who were like, Overwatch didn't patent future Japanese aesthetic, and it's like, shut up, bro. Like this is just like everything looks exactly Overwatch, like even down to the health packs and the spawn room that they were showing. Like
the robots too.
The robots look like Omnics. Like it just looks straight up like Overwatch. But I think already one thing that they have been talking about is that they don't want like healing as like a thing in the game, like to this extent, like to the extent where like you're supporting and healing people up a mass load in the middle of a fight. Like I think they want the fights to be a bit more dynamic. How do you guys view Overwatch in that sense? Like, do you think it's a game where people should be healing a bunch all the time, and it's like mid-combat healing, sustaining characters is good, or is it like actually something that needs to be moved beyond? I'll go to Custa first as the support player.
I think there needs to be a better balance. Sometimes like people get frustrated with the offensive capabilities of supports, but I think if you take away the utility and some of the damage, I think what happens is you run into heroes like Lifeweaver, like Moira, like Mercy, where I think the frustration with these like heavy healing supports and like characters being dependent on just getting healed incessantly is, as a support player, I feel like you're pushing the gameplay into one player. Right. And, you see this with Mercy with a Sojourn player, right? You're putting all your eggs in the Sojourn basket. Same thing with Tank when you're playing Lifeweaver. You're putting all of your eggs in the Tank basket, or that you're just going to heal everyone and hope that gets you across the line. And I don't think that's interactive. I don't think that's fun to play as the support player. And I think playing against it, especially when you're playing against your Orysas, your Roadhogs, all those kind of things, the frustration is that these heroes never die. And I think any situation where it feels like I can shoot the tank and they're never going to die, that's bad. And honestly, Reddit has this take that kind of grinds my gears, where they're kind of like,
One sec. Let me quickly interrupt while you rev your gears. Bogur, I think there's an echo coming from your
yes,
Discord. Like when Custa talks, we can hear him a little bit from you.
my bad.
Carry on.
But the frustration, in my opinion, is that like people like you should never just always shoot the tank. And I'm like, if I don't shoot the tank, the tank's just gonna keep walking at me, and I'm gonna fucking die, right? Like he's gonna put out infinite damage. There needs to be a situation where you can shoot the tank, and the tank can be punishable, right? So that's the issue with the tanks. The tank and support problem is kind of like intermixed in a way that you can't just have tanks live forever in their current state because they just do too much damage, right? And as a support player, you don't want to just be healing the tanks. You want to be more interactive. Some people will push back on this. I actually was talking in the Discord, Overwatch Discord recently with like a bunch of support players who like playing Life Weaver Mercy. They say, I want to be able to just support my team incessantly, and I don't want to feel like I have to do damage or use my offensive capabilities to be able to win the game. And I don't agree with that. Like, I think that's just like two different frames of thoughts of how to play the game. And that was kind of like my moment of like, how do you fix this problem? Because there are tank players who want to be able to never die. There are support players who want to be able to permanently heal, and they don't want to play the other way. And I think that's kind of like the problem that is like unsolvable for the developers. So I think they're trying to like meet the middle, but it's never gonna be perfect.
I mean, that's a
Rant
microcosm.
over,
No, it's a very good rant. I think that's a microcosm of Overwatch in so many ways, and that it is this game that bridges so many types of people, but then maybe not enough to like quell the unrest between any of them. Like there's the people who, like you said, who want to be aggressive supports and want to be DPSing and doing other utility, and then there's the people who want to be only healing. And we've made a game that kind of appeals enough to each of them, but not enough to satisfy them to a full extent, because one side is always upset about the other. Yeatle, I'm curious about your opinion on this. Like, how do you feel about this? Is there a solution? Is there like we have to pick a direction, or is it just Overwatch will always be the middle game?
I think it's always going to be the middle game. I think Custa brings up a good point about there being two different like play styles that people want to have, and Overwatch is a game that's all about having different kinds of play styles in a way. So I think it's okay as long as one isn't like way too strong. Like it's only okay, we're only playing Life Weaver Mercy every game. That's it. That's the meta. You can't play anything else. You just need a heal bot the whole time. I think they just got to keep trying to find the middle ground where it's viable to do either one. Of course, that's really hard to do, but that's the best that they can do for the game that they have.
All right, and Bogur, how about you? I mean, and how do you view the original question as well? Like, what do you see as the role of supporting and healing in the game?
I think one of the best things about Overwatch is the diversity of playstyles you can have, especially with Mercy and Life Weaver. A lot of Overwatch has been an introductory type of game for a lot of people into the FPS genre, right? Because it is not as mechanically intensive for certain characters. You can play your Tracers and Genjis, but you can also play your Mercies and Reinhardts, right? And there is a lot of skill expressions in those characters, but the minimum requirement isn't that high. And a lot of people, just as Custa said, really like not going around and shooting stuff. They like healing and supporting. I actually asked Skiesti why she likes Mercy for one of my videos that I'm making, and she explained to me she really likes Mercy because when she's playing Mercy, she has this view over the entire game, and she can support her teammates, she can res her teammates, damage boost. It's a lot more different play style, and it fits people. Not everyone needs to be rank 1, right? Like if you want to be top 10 or whatever, you probably want to deal damage, or you want to be really competitive, you want to be do damage like on BAP and Kiriko and stuff. But some people want to chill and play Mercy and Life Weaver, and I think that's a really cool part about the game in general. And I remember Custa was talking about the support, about some people were complaining that supports do too much damage. I absolutely believe that supports should be doing damage. Maybe some shouldn't, but I think they should have some way to fight back. And I don't mind supports that do more damage like Zen, Kiriko, or whatever, as long as there's a trade-off, and maybe less healing than they deal. Like, I don't like Baptiste. I've said that multiple times. I don't like immortality. He has mobility. He has way too much damage, way too much healing, way too much mobility. He has immortality, and his ult is crazy, right? There needs to be balance between these things. If your character is going to do a lot of damage, it needs to do less healing or have less utility, right? There needs to be that you can't have a character do everything. And Kiriko doesn't heal that much, right? But she still does a lot of damage and has, Suzu, and her ult is one of the best in the games, right? So I think it's just the balance between these things. And I absolutely agree that support should be doing damage, because if you look at Dota or League, I'm sorry, support players, for those games, support is so boring in those games. It is so boring. You are a punching bag for your team, especially in Dota. You buy all the items, you die every single fight, you have nothing for you. You buy all utility for your team, you just, sit on your ADC, and that's it. That's your entire game. And I'm sure it's fun for some people, but Overwatch 2 and Overwatch in general has always had supports be actually fun roles to play. And I don't think that should change. I think some supports just do too many things at once.
I agree. That's the Kiriko issue, right? Is like Kiriko is good at everything, right? And Baptiste falls into that category as well. And it just feels like it just feels difficult to deal with. And I think that's where some of the tank frustration lies as well, is tanks are just a very limited role in what you can and can't do sometimes in every single match. While it does feel like there's a reason DPS players just go play support, and they're just like, I'm just going to play Baptiste because then I can do everything on my own and I don't have to rely on healers because I can heal myself, right? So I agree with that sentiment by Bogur, but that's like the balance where the devs are always trying to find. So I think it also leads into the issue, and I think I've talked about this on your podcast as well, SVB. This game isn't balanced from the top end. It's not like a purely competitive. Like, they are trying to cater to the casual players who do just like playing Mercy and Lifeweaver. So it's hard to, sort of cater to that player base while also not just like directly affecting the top end. Because like, if Lifeweaver ever becomes meta at the top ranks, you best believe that's when the supports are going to start whining. Because it just like the tanks, because like we don't want to do that as much as they don't want to play Orisa.
That's very fair. Yeatle, how do you feel about all this?
Yeah, no, I mostly agree. I'm just a little bit conflicted about like some heroes can't do everything, because they shouldn't be able to do everything to like the best damage, the best healing, the best immortality, yada yada yada. But like when I think about tanks in the same kind of sphere, that like if tanks are only really good at one thing, it makes them a lot more counterable, and that's where I'm like, I'm not 100% sold on how I feel about the direction of where things should go. Like, I think it would be nice if everything's a little bit more flexible, but yeah, I definitely get the argument of like, we shouldn't make them do everything per se.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair counterpoint to bring up, Yeatle, which is that the all-roundedness, especially, I mean, the tank role especially it's true of, because they are the one. So, because in the support, you could have one support that's very good at damage and one support that's very good at healing, and they can kind of compensate for each other. And, not to get into another 5v5 66 debate for the 10 billionth time. But with the tank role being just one player now, the fact that you're like, the all-rounder tanks tend to be the best. We talked about Orisa. I think Sig falls in this category as well, and why often, there were times when people really liked Sig is that, he can kind of inoffensively do everything. He can look out for himself. He can damage. He can block. He can stun as well. So he's like, it's good for tanks to be able to do that. So you're right in that as a unilateral direction, it's not necessarily good, but I guess in context, it really depends on the hero. As you guys have all said, the problem is when they're just better at every aspect of it than any other hero, and then it becomes problematic. Bogur, any thoughts? Head empty. Oh, he's muted.
No thoughts. Head empty.
Okay, that's totally fair. Okay, I was curious to your guys' opinion, so thank you for sharing that. I think it's also interesting that Bogur brought up League and Dota, because I've been grinding a lot of Dota. Fitzy plays support when I play with Fitzy, or I used to until he got too high ranked to queue with me. He loves support, but mostly he's just an invoker one trick. I know he will say that that's slander. He just likes playing any character that EMPs, basically. This is the truth of Fitzy, is that he has a guy called Invoker who EMPs in Dota, and he likes playing Sombra who EMPs
We gotta stop this man from playing video games on the internet. He's here to ruin everyone else's time.
Literally. He gets his shits and giggles from just ruining other people's fun. So I guess that's his archetype of hero. But yeah, I think Bogur's right in that it is the least queued support role, or like queued role in Dota, in MOBAs is the support role, because they are so differential. But again, there will always be an imbalance, I suppose. And it's like, is the imbalance tanks? Like, people feel like, I guess it's whatever role is most reliant on their team, ironically, in a team game, will always suffer, right? Whether that's the tank in Overwatch or the support in a MOBA when you don't have as much power to like win a game on your own, you're gonna feel bad about it, I guess. Any thoughts on this before we move on from anyone? No?
No, I think we hit it.
All right, awesome. Well, let's head back to the patch notes then, because we did not talk about the venture changes that Bogur was eager to talk about. So let's head back and look at not massive changes, but there are changes nonetheless. So venture, they now have their primary fire damage decreased from 45 to 40, the explosion, the drill dash, initial impact damage decreased from 40 to 30, and then the ultimate charge increased cost by 10%. Bogur, unhappy? Happy?
I mean, I've played a lot of Venture, and I don't think Venture is that oppressive, especially in high elos. Maybe in low elos, Venture is a pub stomper. Maybe, I don't know. Probably, but everything's a pub stomper in low elos, to be fair. And
Well, no.
oh,
Some things are easier to pub stomp than others.
yeah,
and
well,
that's
you
the
can't
problem,
pub
right?
stomp on Mercy. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
But my point is, like it's not like Venture was ruining every game. I barely see Venture in high elo. I don't know. I feel like it's really easy to punish Venture with magnetic grenade. I hate
Yeah,
that
it's
ability
oppressive,
so
yeah.
much. I have never realized how much I hate this ability until I started playing Venture. It is so stupid. I just want flashbang back. Okay, it's such a stupid ability. You just sit behind the corner and it just homes on you, and then you're stuck, and then you die. You can't do anything. I despise it. Either way, I don't think it's too crazy of a change because Venture can still do a lot of damage, but it does remove the easy to access one-shot combo. But if you did that combo, you would barely have any abilities, only your dig. And if you have only your dig in the middle of the team, you'd probably die if they are looking. So I don't necessarily agree, especially right after they launch the character, because nobody's gonna play the character anymore. But whatever. Maybe it's for the good. I don't know.
Custa?
I will come in to defend the situation because here's the thing. Venture's an interesting hero because this is like what I talked about, where it's like I think the reason they nerfed it so quickly, the win rates must have been off the charts, like across the board, for that to happen. Probably more at the lower ranks. But as someone in the higher ranks dealing with Venture, the biggest frustration that I had is that and I think this is a really bad playstyle for the game, is it feels like there is a Venture hiding behind every corner. Because as Bogur said, the thing is the Venture is useless if they only have dig. But if they kill you and then they dig, that's really valuable, right? So what happens is they were just hiding behind corners, waiting for you to come around. They would left click, drill dash, left click, drill, and you would die, and there's nothing that your team could do to it, right? So I think it was getting a little oppressive and the combo was too easy to hit. So I think tuning it down a little bit was good. I think the ult nerf was necessary. Like, you were getting your ult so fucking fast in some of those fights. I don't think that one's one that we're going to contest. So I don't think the nerf was crazy. It's so early on into the hero's like gameplay that it's hard to like really know exactly how strong this hero is. I agree with Bogur. This hero is probably not going to be good at the highest rank. I think it's hard to play with as a team, but it kind of feels like a pub stompy hero, especially at lower ranks. I think your ability to win the game as just Venture is pretty high at low elo because you can just like execute people on your own.
I think I spoke about this on the last podcast as well, but I think one of the biggest problems is I swear to God the Venture's footsteps are not correctly
Very quiet.
put in.
Yeah.
They are not correct. Like they just do not make sound. Like people will sneak, like you will sneak up on someone and they will not hear you, and I will not hear Venture sneaking up. I mean, that's part of the assassination that you're talking about, Custa, where with most of the characters, even like sometimes a second's or like half a second's notice before the shooting begins is like enough to make the difference, where you're like, oh, okay, crap, there's there. You turn around, you can maybe get a utility out or something if you're a support player. Whereas with Venture, it's like you're not until you're getting drilled do you realize that you're like, oh, there's a Venture here, and then by the time you realize the third shot, the second shot, and the third part of the combo, and you're dead. So I think that's one of the big frustrations. I do agree with Bogur that I don't think this character was seeing a lot of high elo gameplay. Like, in fact, I think by like even before the patch, by the time I was playing Calm, people were like stopping Venture. Like you were not seeing Venture because ultimately like other heroes just do better stuff and more reliable stuff. And I know a lot of people compared Venture to DPS Doomfist in the sense that it was like a lot of like trade a kill type hero. It was like you go in, assassinate someone, and then good chance you might just die in the process of doing it. So I don't know if I feel like that is a playstyle that needs to be in Overwatch. Like, I can understand people wanting that in Overwatch, but I also understand it's a very frustrating playstyle to be on the receiving end of. Like, I can see the fun in it and like setting up for it. But nobody fucking liked DPS Doomfist in Overwatch 1, I promise you. Like, there was nobody who was happy with getting rooftop assassinated. So I don't know if there's a huge desire for this, like, I trade as someone in the backline and I, like, assassinate playstyle. But Yeatle, how do you feel about Venture overall and how this went down with the nerfs and all?
I'm not a fan of the nerfs, but I definitely see why they did it. It's because of that whole hide and seek play style that you guys just mentioned, which isn't something new to Overwatch. Like preseason 9, Junkrat could hide in a corner and then 1-2 buckle my shoe someone. But even now, I think Tracer can probably still hide in a corner and one clip someone. But the key thing here is it's easy to do it on Venture compared to like one clipping someone on Tracer, for example. So I think what they should have done is maybe made it a little bit harder to get the combo. And by that, maybe they nerfed the drill damage more, but not the primary fire. Because what they did to the primary fire is now I think it takes 4 shots to kill someone. Like if you just hit 4 shots in a row to kill someone versus before it was 3. I think someone fact check that maybe. But yeah, overall, I'm not a fan of how they changed Venture. On top of that, now they can't really dual Tracer very well, and I think that was something that was like good for the game because Tracer is very good, and a hero that's a little bit worse than Tracer being able to win or take that duel a little bit easier, I think that was also good. Overall,
Yeah,
not a fan though.
I think that's fair. I think as someone, like, just before Season 9, I spent, like, my week learning Junkrat, and I see a lot of the same parallels where it's like, yes, there is that wombo combo of, like, you just delete someone. I like the 1-2, what was it, buckle your shoe? I like that.
1-2 buckle my shoe.
I like that expression. The problem for those heroes is that outside of that little niche, they're completely useless. And like with Junkrat, like you just cannot duel another DPS fairly. Like you have to hide around a corner because trying to duel a DPS, like duel a Cassidy, try it. And like they have to be missing twice as many shots as you before they, you know, for you to have any chance of winning. Just because you have no headshot multiplier, right? You're like donk, 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 whatever the noise now is of a projectile hitting. It takes so long and they just go tap, tap, 2 headshots and you're dead. So there is that fundamental problem there that exists. And I want to swing back to what Bogur mentioned about the Magno Bang because I fucking hate that ability. Always hate that fucking ability. But I do want to bring up the issue of these like mobility canceling abilities. I feel like they're just like worse than a stun in most ways. It's depending on the hero you're playing. Because I think the other thing I'm thinking about right now is the Mauga Cage and how frustrating it is for some heroes in particular. And I think of like Doomfist and Venture are good examples of this where you get Mauga Cage, there's like just nothing you can do. You're just there as a dummy existing in this thing. And I think that's like orders of magnitude worse than being stunned, I feel. I feel like you just like, if you're stunned, it's for a briefer duration and then you get back to doing what you were doing. Whereas just standing there for like 3-4 seconds on end. And again, I think the effective duration of Magno Bang is so high that like when you get locked on, it's like 2 seconds where you just panic, stood there, you cannot do a single thing. And like the effective duration of it compared to the flashbang is so much higher that I feel like we need to rethink this whole, you just can't use any mobilities when this ability activates. How do you guys feel?
Here's my thing, and because I've actually talked about this on my stream, I think I don't mind the hinder that much. I think it's an interesting ability to have that punishes people for just like being careless and running into your melee. The problem with the hinder is that it people who just like, they now just throw it into orbit and then it just locks onto the first person and it just starts going. My thing is, I think if it had melee range, similar to the way Flashbang was in the past, then it's something that people can play around. The problem right now is that you can't play around it. Like, as eventually they just throw it in your general direction and it hits you, right? We have cooked up. How would you feel if it was like a lasso, a melee range lasso that if they hit you with it, it's like a smaller radius, kind of like Flashbang, and then if it hit you, then all of a sudden you're hindered for that short duration. Like, I think then at least as like a tracer or like a character, at least you have some way to like be like, if I get close to melee and they have that up, then I can play around it. But I think taking hinder out of the game, I think just enables more mobility characters more and more and more. There needs to be some counterplay and punishment to just getting so close to certain characters. And I agree the same with Mauga. I think the fix that I would do to Mauga Cage, because I agree it's oppressive as well, reduce the HP of the cage so they can't just drop it in a team fight and expect it to never die.
Yeatle, how do you feel?
Damn, I wish I had a good like take on it, but I don't really have too much of an opinion. I know why it's in the game. They have it to deal with like, you know, high mobile heroes, and it's a bit of an easier ability to hit, and that's the whole point. That it's like it's how the 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. How's that expression going? People that work all day to come to Overwatch and just be able to
That's the
jump,
most gamer shit
be
I
able to
know.
fight the.
How long do
my
people
God.
work usually?
What do
however
normal
long that
people
is.
do?
Yeah, people with lives, to be able to combat people that don't have lives. So, yeah, I don't really have a strong take on it. Not right now, at least.
You said you started off by saying you didn't have anything interesting to say, but you had a lot interesting to say there. You were just revealing that he's like classic degen streamer who just like, it's a banana, Michael. How much could it cost? $20? Bogur, how do you feel about Magno Bang or
As
working 9
a
to 5?
non-normal person, I think people that are normal should probably implement some skill before they hit their abilities. I think magnetic grenade is a little bit too magnetic. I agree with Custa. It's not about the hinder, it's about how it sticks to people. It's just you throw it behind, like you just throw it somewhere and it just goes behind the corner. Like, oh, I caught something. I'll push them down. Oh, they're dead. It's like it's really boring. As opposed to, I've said it so many times, as opposed to flashbang back in the day, you could outplay it somehow, right? You could go behind cover. It was just for a small time. You could blink. You could deflect and whatever. With a magnetic grenade is just so random. It's so hard to deflect. It's so hard to blink past it. Sometimes it travels to Horizon Lunar Colony chasing people. I just don't like that ability. I don't even think cast players like that ability. Nobody likes that ability. Just change it. Make it some sort of skill expression. There is nothing more tilting. Even when you watch a cast player, they just throw it randomly every 8 seconds or whatever. They just throw it, catches something, that thing dies, and it's so oppressive against characters like Doomfist, Ball, Venture, obviously Tracer's insta dead. There's no escape. And with Cage, I also like. I think it's just a lazy design to just disable abilities like that instead of making something more creative. Obviously, it's hard to make creative stuff. I like Cage as an ult. I think it's you can use it in a lot of interesting ways, but most of the time it boils down to Malga walks in, player says Cage on the tank is dead. You can't do anything. That's it, right? So it's a little bit. I like when abilities and in things in general in games have risk reward, and magnetic grenade doesn't have risk reward, and Malga Cage doesn't have a risk reward. So kind of bores me most of the time. But yeah, magnetic grenade, get it out. Hate that ability. Terrible ability.
I think to again add on, I think the problem with Magno Bang from someone who's been on the receiving end on various different characters, that it's not always clear when you've dodged it. Because as like when you're playing Tracer, you can blink and it still catches you. Whereas again with Flashbang, it was a lot clearer. Like it comes out, you blink, it's dodged, and then you can carry on. Whereas I've had these moments sometimes where I blink, and I'm like, is this actually far enough for it to like start heat seeking? Do I need to recall again and then like actually dodge it again? Because then you do get hit, you're dead. So
you know what's the most tilting part about this ability? It cancels Junker Queen ult.
mhm.
Yeah,
That is so stupid. Like
I'm a
just
firm
go.
believer it needs unstoppable. Junk Queen ult needs unstoppable. There's no reason it shouldn't be unstoppable when that ultimate goes out. Like, I think it's crazy. Yeah, it just like, she's like fucking spinning her shit at 1,000,000 miles an hour and fucking spinning at you, and then she gets struck by the grenade and just like stops, and you're like, okay.
And
well,
then
fuck.
the ult is gone, and that's it. And
Yeah.
you're like, okay, cool.
It's just done.
Yeah, I agree. And then to the Malga thing, I think you could still allow them to use mobility, just not to get out of the cage. Like you can let a Reinhardt
You can.
charge, just not out of the cage, or like a Tracer blink, just not out of the like. It just she just hits against the edge of the cage if she's blinking, because then you still have something you can do, but like the guy can still shoot you pretty easily. There's not like a large range of where you can go.
Have you played League of Legends? Mordekaiser? When
Oh,
he
yeah.
ults,
Oh right, yeah.
yeah. When he ults, they can still use abilities, but it's just like a 1v1, right?
Well, yeah, Valorant has two, or Riot has two forms of that, because Valorant has a character that puts you in a nether world and you duel each other. I don't know if Overwatch players would like that, where they're just like,
Yeah, I don't know how.
Solo-
I don't know if that's an Overwatch.
Can you imagine
ability, yeah.
using that on a Mercy and you're just sitting there like alone 1v1?
Also, then on the other side, the Malga players would lose their mind if they ever cage something that actually just beat them. Like it just like
Yeah.
cages like a Bastion, and the Bastion just goes brrr, and they're like, fuck. Although not Bastion, not a great example of Bastion because he's actually kind of bad, but a different character and just beats them. Especially if it was a support, people would lose their mind. Okay, any more thoughts on any of those things before we move on to talking about upcoming tank changes. Yeatle?
Yeah, I think we all like more or less agree that it'd be nicer if it's harder to hit some of these abilities. And I just wonder like how viable is it for Blizzard to do that for like the new players? Like if Hinder, for example, you had to actually like hit the person with it. Maybe it has a slightly bigger hitbox, not as bad as Flashbang and Overwatch 1 big, because that was ginormous. But I wonder if it's like if it's something that's actually viable to do in some shape or form. Just a passing thought.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to bring up. I think one of the things that I've noticed recently is how often people quote unquote counterpick but don't fight the thing they're counterpicking. Like I think the theory behind a Cassidy is like, oh, we're giving them this hero that can counter a dive hero, like let's say counter a tracer. But I cannot tell you the number of times I'm watching people's games or I'm playing in a game and they'll be like, okay, I'm picking Cassidy to stop this guy. And then they're off in fucking Narnia dueling some other thing, right? They're like, they just fight something else. And I do think that's like maybe a gap between what the devs think a hero is for versus what they end up doing. And I think they're keeping a ability like Flashbang or Magno Bang easy to use to the ends of like, we want to give a metal rank player a easy enough option, but I'm not even sure it's working that way. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm completely out of the loop, and that is exactly how a gold player is playing Cassidy. But somehow I feel like they just would continue to play Cassidy the same way and not actually do is and the Magno Bang is just being used in the same obnoxious way of just chucked into a corner, chucked into a grenade, into a choke, and just latches onto something. So it's a good point you bring up, Yeatle.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's like, we're like, oh, we would like more skill expression with it, but maybe the skill expression is too hard for like lower rank players and people just aren't going to use it because it doesn't do what they need it to do. But I think, as I said, I think it was one of those reworks that everyone's like, nobody likes this, you know, in a way. Like it didn't solve the problem for anyone. So I think it's one of those things that's probably on the chopping block. I feel like the devs are like very aware about how much magnetic grenade is just not appreciated in the game.
We hope so. We hope so. Bogur, any more thoughts on your despised Magno Bang?
I think if you suck at using an ability, you should get better at using that ability. Thank you for listening. Can we remove that ability? Appreciate it. Next. That's the end.
There's some Reddit fodder right there. The Reddit's coming. Reddit's like, this guy fucking, I work 9 to 5, I work 8 to 5, whatever the fuck normal people do.
I'm a single father of 3 children. I work on an oil rig 20 hours a day, and I'm not GM. I deserve to get GM, guys. Please, what the hell?
I come back after a hard day's work, and all I want is 1 hour of my weekend to be able to play Magno Bang and Magno Stick something and feel good. And this fucking streamer who degen hours doesn't even work a real job, doesn't deserve money. Fuck this guy.
Quote unquote Bogur.
Bogur guy.
If that is his real name.
I mean, it isn't, but it's definitely the name he's chosen. Okay, let's then talk about this upcoming dev patch or dev director's take. Because this has obviously lit the community on fire a little bit. People have overreacted, and I think we can talk about the overreactions as well. But let's just start first with the substance, if you even agree that it's an overreaction, which is that the major news is that tanks are going to be, in fact, let me pull some of this up on screen. The tanks are going to have a passive to have a 25% damage reduction from headshots, and also a knockback resistance up from 30% to 50%, and the armor damage reduction is back to 5 damage per projectile with up to a 50% maximum, and the healing passive is now no longer 20 HP per second, but rather 10 HP per second plus 5% of the maximum HP per second of that character. So they give the example of Reinhardt, who will now recover 45 health per second, and there's going to be some changes to Junk Queen and Wrecking Ball. So that's a lot. That's a lot, and Bogur's laughing his head off, so I'll go to Bogur first. Bogur, tank changes, TLDR, how do you feel?
Bro, somebody at Blizzard has had a few rough matches on tank, I promise you. That when I read that, that was crazy. I think just 2 of those are enough. I don't see the point of the knockback resistance, right? The 50% is just whatever. And it's just annoying. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm losing games because I'm being knocked around. It's interesting, but I don't know.
Well, no, it's interesting that you don't think that, because I feel like every other tank disagrees
okay, listen,
with that.
everyone wants their role to be broken, okay? Obviously,
Yeah,
on one side of me wants the tank to have 100% knockback resistance and never takes damage and do 1 million. But realistically, like, how many characters even boot me, right? So I don't know. You barely get booped anyways, right? The most annoying thing is Brigitte whiplash, whip shot, not whiplash, whip shot, and Lucio boop, but Lucio boop barely boops you, right? And I don't know. And second of all, I don't like the damage reduction to the head, like headshot damage reduction. I like the passive healing because it didn't feel like you were getting any healing from the passive on tank, to be honest. And I like the armor changes because the armor changes aren't a straight buff. Like, I actually have a spreadsheet. If you want to, I can send it to you. I don't know if you have it.
Yeah, sure. Go
There's a
ahead.
spreadsheet. It shows which characters are losing the most and which are winning. Because, for example, characters like Reinhardt are going to deal more damage against armor, actually 35% more damage. And characters like Diva are going to deal like 30 plus less damage, 30%, yeah, around 35% less damage, right? So characters like Pharah and stuff that do a lot of burst damage at once do more damage, and snipers can do more damage. But things like Diva, Tracer, Queen, Roadhog are going to do less damage because they have pellets, right? A lot of people don't understand about how the armor change works. So maybe we should explain it. I think right now it's 30% damage reduction, and the way it's going to work with the new patch is like the old armor in Overwatch 1. So it's either going to be 50% damage reduction, or over a certain threshold, it's just going to reduce by 5 damage. So, for example, Reinhardt swing 100 damage. Right now it deals 70. After the patch, it's going to be 95. So he's against armor. People are also really confused on what armor is. Armor is the orange thing. So many people ask me if
yellow?
Symmetra, if this affects Symmetra, and I was like, what are you guys saying? Orange is armor, right? So I like this change a lot because I didn't feel annoyed by things that do a lot of burst damage on tank, but I felt really annoyed by tracers and sombras and Bastion. I don't think it affects too much. Bastion, it still like reduces his damage, but Bastion just does so much, and I think it's really good because you're not gonna get poked out all the time, and you can dodge everything else, right? You can dodge fire rockets, you can play behind cover for snipers and stuff. So I like this. I don't like the damage reduction for headshot because, especially with the armor thing, Diva headshotting you with her shotguns is basically going to deal the same damage as a body shot if you have armor. It's going to be 1.1 damage or something, right? And I think it kind of reduces. I don't know. I don't like the fact that people are not going to get rewarded for being headshot. I think people should play smarter. I think being headshot is somebody playing well, right? Like you not playing that well. I think it's too much. I think all of these changes are too much. I think just 2 of these changes are enough to make tank really good. I feel like if you release this with all 4 buffs, tank will be absolutely insane like mid-season. I don't like I don't see how people like Cloudy and Reinhardt, who has 400 armor, is not gonna dominate every lobby, right? He's gonna deal more damage against tanks. He's gonna barely take any damage. He's gonna self heal by holding his shield. He's not gonna get pushed anywhere. It's just gonna be so crazy, in my opinion. I think it's gonna piss off so many players, and it's just gonna get reverted anyways, right? But I like big changes, and I like them testing stuff, so I don't mind it too much as long as they actually change it fast afterwards, right? And they don't make it worse than it was before.
So this spreadsheet, by the way, is this by Rad Dad Overwatch? Is that correct?
I just found it on Reddit.
Okay, I think so. I think the person's here in chat. So shout out to them for making
Shout out.
the spreadsheet. So Yeatle, as the other fellow tank, before we get to Custa and he can kind of doomsday about this, how do you feel about these upcoming tank changes?
Yeah, there's a lot of big things going on there. So I think overall, I'm a fan of these tank changes happen because supports got all the changes like early on in Overwatch and whatever. There was a whole support arc. Then the DPS got their DPS passive, so then it was like time to shine for DPS. Hey, now it's tanks' turn. So I think it's cool that tanks are finally like in a big buff patch, and it is a lot of changes, and they're going to be massive impacts because like armor. I think the armor is the biggest one with how it's going to like affect the game, because I think as you guys were talking about earlier, like heroes like Reinhardt and Winston that benefit a lot from just the burst damage versus like someone like Wrecking Ball or like Diva, their pellet damage is less than tank. So I think it incentivizes shooting tanks less and more so doing the other tank things. I don't think it's going to be as bad of like the example of Cloudy dominating. Like Cloudy's going to dominate, but the idea is there's supposed to be a tank of equal skill on the enemy team. So it's going to be a back and forward. It's not like, oh, this guy's just going to roll the lobby. In theory, you shouldn't. Overall, yeah, I'm a fan of the changes. And I think the headshot one, that one was a little bit weird. But I think of a hero like, I don't know, Zarya or something who can't really do anything about like Widowmaker. You peek for a second, bam, headshot. I guess it's nice. It is a bit of a weird change. Yeah, and overall, I'm a fan. Did I miss any of the changes? I don't know. Oh, the healing out of combat one.
And the knockback.
And the knockback. Yeah, I mean, less abilities being used on tanks, I guess.
A ball player. Yeah, I guess those things are nice to not be pushed as much, and I get to heal more out of combat.
Ball also knocks people back, though. Ball also knocks people back.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Ball does lose a little bit on it. So as I was doing this ball and rank the GM, one of the play styles you do is like sometimes you engage on the supports and they'll back up like a lot so far that they can't help their tank. And in that moment, that's when you turn around, you boop the tank in, and then you shoot them. So this is kind of like a double nerf for ball in that way, because one, you're not going to boop them that far, and two, you have you don't have the burst damage. Your guns are like tracers almost. So a little bit of nerf there for ball. But either way, it's just a big change for tank. So I'm interested to see how it plays out. And I would have liked something with like more counterplay and stuff like that for like counters and yada yada yada, but this is the simple route of just change numbers and see what happens. Give tanks their fun in the sun. So yeah, let's see what happens.
Or Custa, you're dying to interject. Go ahead.
Well, for me, the thing like this spreadsheet, I think really highlights it really well as well. It's like the thing about it is that's a whole lot of red of tanks against tanks with armor, right? So it's like this is going to make tanks worse against other tanks. So maybe that will go against the style of like counterpicking and feeling like you're just playing that 1v1, which I think is a good thing. So I like the armor change. I think it's interesting. It's mixing things up. As I said, there's breakpoints. Plus 4 dive heroes that we say that they die so much. The heroes that are usually played in the opposition of dive as well are going to do less damage. Tracer, Sojourn with the left click, Reaper is going to do less damage. So those tanks hopefully should be enabled by this. I think the boop changes is interesting. I've heard a lot of tanks complain they just get pushed around. I don't notice it as much. As I said, I'm the Lucio. I'm pushing them. I feel like tanks don't go fucking anywhere. And now they're absolutely not going to go anywhere. So I guess good luck other support. I'm running away as Lucio. I agree. The 25% headshot change is the one that feels out of place. Like, I agree. So many tanks have been complaining. I think it's a little excessive, but there's enough sentiment there that there's obviously something wrong. Tanks need to be empowered a little bit. So I like the idea of big changes that are going to empower tanks. I think that's a step in the right direction. And as Bogur said, it's their time. But I think the headshot change is just a little bit too much. I think the passive change out of combat is really good. I think it's not going to be that effective, but it'll be valuable for certain tanks and interesting. But the headshot stuff is going to make them feel like raid bosses, I think. And I think it's going to take support and DPS's ability to deal with these tanks away from them. And I think that it's going to be really difficult to deal with it. I was sort of talking about it yesterday, and I think this has been referenced in the past in like season 2, someone was saying, but like a part of me feels like, because of what Bogur said, it's going to feel like Dead by Daylight. Of it's like me and my 2 supports and my 2 DPS were fucking running for our lives as their tank tries to run us down, but the objective that we're trying to do is not die fast enough before our tank kills their entire team. And that is my fear for the direction this game will go with this headshot thing, because it'll just be really difficult to do anything. And if it is that bad, as Bogur says, they react pretty quickly, but if it is really that bad, the sentiment will really hurt the game, in my opinion. I think you'll see a lot of people get very frustrated, and then it'll be DPS and supports complaining. Like, people are always going to complain. It's going to be frustrating, but I just don't think they should overdo it. And I think if they take away the headshot thing, I think everyone will be fine. But maybe that won't make take strong enough. I don't really know. It shouldn't be so doomer. As you said, there was some massive overreactions on the internet. Yeah, internet yesterday. You had people fucking freaking out, acting like the world is going to end. It's kind of one of those things that might actually not be that big. and we won't know until we really try it when the mid-season patch comes out.
Yeah, we haven't played it, and I think that's like such a crucial part of a lot of the opinions that come through, because it happened with season 9 when they changed, you know, hitboxes and stuff, and people were like, you know, the first things we saw of it were people in the fucking practice range being like, look at how far I can shoot this guy, and it was just like the most dumb and moronic thing. And I'll hold off on a second for my rant on people's reactions. I'm actually just going to engage first with the substance. I think what I will say is that I concur with you guys that I think it feels a little bit classic Blizzard in that they tend to overreact to changes. They tend or to people's complaints. Like they tend to kind of go nuclear and they're like, here's 5 changes at once. Even in the season 9 thing, it was like hitbox changes and everyone's health is going up, and, you know, and these other changes are coming through. So it's like a lot that gives that panic sense, right? Human beings fundamentally don't like change. And when you see like 4 things are changing, you're like, oh my god, it's gonna fucking break the game. So like rather than maybe do 2 or 3, it kind of feels like we're never in between. We're never in like they do like 2 or 3 medium changes. They either do like nothing, which is just like, you know, here's 5 damage less, and then you're like, what is this? What the fuck is this gonna do? Or they go nuclear and they're like, here's 4 changes to tanks. You know, like it's like seasons of people being like, we need help on tanks, and they're like, okay, now you get boop less, you take less headshots, you got armor better, and you're gonna get more healing. Oh, by the way, we're buffing Junk Queen and Ball as well. So like it's like everything, like oh lord. So I think that's one complaint I have. The other complaint I have is it's a little bit confusing as this spreadsheet. Like, thank you to people like Rad Dad Overwatch who are like trying to help us simplify and understand. Because when you say like armor is gonna do less damage, so it's such like an unintuitive thing for a player to figure out, and it's certainly going to be massively unintuitive in the middle of a game. If you like, because most people are not reading the fucking patch notes, they're not watching these spreadsheets. They're just going to play the game, open up the game at the mid-season, and all of a sudden they're going to be like, why does my diva feel fucking shit all of a sudden? So for all the times when we talk about Overwatch balance, and one of the counterpoints is like, well, they don't want to add anything too complicated. They don't want to do this change because it'd be too complicated. It would make this character like unfigure-outable. Well, this is hella fucking complicated. So I'm a little bit perplexed by that as well, where it's like, why are we making such a like a complex change? I don't think it's necessarily a bad change. It's just like a very hard to read change for in the game. Now that was my criticisms, but what I will defend is that they're doing something for the fucking game, and people are never fucking happy. Like they are trying to change something for the game, as Yeatle pointed out at the start of Overwatch 2. It was support players who weren't happy, and they went YOLO with it, or they went crazy with it. Like, here's 3 supports back to back to back. Fucking like a Drake record, and we're also
Support
gonna
passive.
We're gonna add the support passive buffs. We're gonna buff all the supports. So each of the supports got like buffs along the way, except for like Ana, Ripana. And so they like went ham on it, right? They went crazy on trying to buff supports, and then support became the most popular role. Everyone was loving it, and then the sentiment shifted. People were like, "Fuck supports! They're just doing everything." Then DPS were like, "We don't. What about us? We're the forgotten aspect of this. We're the meme where it's like there's the mother lifting the child up, and it's like there's the neglected child, and then there's the child underwater. There's the skeleton underwater, and that was the DPS players. And they were like, what about us? And then they got their DPS passive, and then for a season or 2, it was like, whoa, DPS are like the most important thing. And now it's tanks' turns, as Yeatle said. And like, what? Yeah, okay, they can fuck up, they can overreact, they can do too much. But what is the alternative? You want them to do nothing? You want them to do very little? And then you just keep complaining, and then we're back to Watch 1, where it's like nothing happened, nothing changed. So like, even if I think they sometimes make bad decisions, and I frequently think they make bad decisions, at least they're fucking changing the game. Why the fuck are people so grumpy and mad anytime something happens? And I fucking hate the doomer takes that always come out anytime there's a big change. People are just like, no, why are you changing things? The internet take paradox, the internet idiot paradox, is simultaneously wanting huge changes, like bring back Overwatch 1, while simultaneously decrying any big changes. Like, whoa, what are you doing? You're gonna ruin the fucking game. Pick one. Like, what do you want them to do? You want them to change, or you want them to not change? When they change, you gotta like be open to it, and we haven't even played it. So I would like to think, before we make any huge conclusions about what this is gonna do and how easy or uneasy it's gonna make the game, let's fucking play it. I'll take it to Bogur. Yeah, go ahead. Custa, you go ahead.
Wait, because it's like season 9 was a success, right? Like we across the board, we agreed that season 9 was good for the game, like over thing.
Yeah.
But like people just love to be doomer about that shit. Like people were freaking out about season 9. I still see people complaining about like the projectile size increase, and they're like, this needs to be reverted, and the HP needs to be reverted. I'm like, why? Like I don't understand where all this like frustration comes with these things. Like, as I said, Nothing happens in season 10, people get frustrated. Season 9, everything happens, people get frustrated. What the fuck do you want? As SBB said. What do you really want? Like, it needs to be, if the game needs to just keep evolving. And even if it's bad, as long as the developers keep staying on top of it, which it seems like they are, that's the important thing. Sorry, Bogur, I cut you off.
I think I agree with SUV. I think what's most important is that they're making changes, because in Overwatch 1 they were not making changes, right? So I like the approach. I like the aggressive approach because it's going to shake things up a lot and it's going to freshen things up. I can see a lot of people grinding the mid-season patch, especially a lot of tank players that are miserable, because it's just a lot of changes that might make the role really fun. It will make it a lot more fun to play. My biggest gripes were always, characters like Tracer and stuff that just poke you all the time, and it's so hard to do anything because they usually want to play behind cover, but Tracer's just gonna, blink past the cover, poke you, your armor is gone, you need to heal up again. It was annoying, right? So I like the armor change, as I said. I like the big change. I don't agree with everything, but again, I like the fact that they're making things a little bit more fresh and making changes happen that are not just Venture being released. Because what made last season really fun was all the changes, right? And people will always complain no matter what. But I think a lot of people like to complain because they're dissatisfied by the fact that they play this game too much and they're burnt out, so they need to blame something. I'll be honest, the people that complain about a lot of things right now have been complaining for years, but it's the same people over and over again. And I get it, it's annoying and not everything is perfect, but if they make the game around, your specific vision, then you're gonna have a bunch of people who are miserable about that. Like, you won't make everyone happy in a game like this, right? It's just impossible, especially with free roles, so many different characters. In every game like this, you have people that think the game is dying and it's terrible. But I think the tank changes are good in the sense that it's going to make things different, as I said. And I liked last season, and I think people will always be unhappy. You can't do anything about that. If they make these changes go live and they're not good, just what's most important is for them to revert them, or revert some of them, or tweak the numbers instead of waiting for months before changing them, because that will be annoying, right? So I think they're pretty good at that, to be honest, nowadays. Back in the day, it would take them a lot of time to change stuff, but now they actually listen. They actually kind of listen, right? And they change stuff. So I trust. I let them cook.
Yeatle, how do you feel?
Yeah, basically, I agree with what Bogur was saying. I think big changes are great, and I wish they did at the start of the season rather than mid-season. But hey, I'll take it mid-season, whatever. Overall, really cool, and I think tank players are gonna love it. But one little side effect that people might not be thinking about is that when you get healed as a tank, you'll probably get healed your armor first. So in turn, as a supports, you'll probably be healing your tanks less. So kind of like a little slight thing for support players. You might not be heal botting as much because you get healed the armor, so there's more damage, like mitigation or reduction or whatever.
Doesn't the HP come first? Wouldn't it heal
Like,
your HP
I mean,
and
the
then your
HP
armor?
comes first.
If you lose your armor and you get
Yeah.
healed, you get the armor. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Right.
but the thing is, the armor is it's really good against certain characters, but other characters do more damage. It's not just a net buff, right? So like, I think the headshot thing that was implemented, the 25% damage reduction on headshot, was implemented because snipers are gonna do more damage against tanks now. So the way they want to combat it by reverting the armor change was to also add the 25%, and if you look at the spreadsheet, it kind of evens out the numbers, so you won't get sniped. And yeah, I think that is the reason why they did it, to be honest. Maybe that was the reason.
The reason I agree with that logic, and it's like it's offsetting some of the armor changes and how it works, but the thing is like that's only for armor. Like, it's a huge net buff across the situation when people don't have armor. Roadhog has no armor. One of the biggest weaknesses to Roadhog is that his head hitbox is the size of a fucking planet, and that's the only way you can get through his 800 HP with 20 or however much damage reduction he has, that he can heal himself, he can get Suzu'd. Like, as a support player, who's like, well, maybe as Kiriko, I can just dink him a bunch of times, or as Zenyatta, I can hit him a headshot. All of a sudden, he's taking 25% less damage than he already currently is. And we just talked about it at the beginning of this podcast. He's already kind of a problem in ranked right now. So it's like, is this just going to get worse? It's one of those things of like, yeah, theoretically, if people play dive, it'll be better and people aren't going to get headshot. Or they might just go Roadhog and walk at you. And that That's my fear, especially as a support player, because we're losing agency to be able to deal with those things. And that's where the Dead by Daylight killer comes and just fucking walking at me, and I
Well-
don't have any pallets to work with.
Maybe they should implement the 25 headshot thing only on targets that have armor, right? You can even extend it beyond tanks because
Yeah.
there's like 3 characters that have huge head hitboxes and have armor like Bastion, Torbjorn, and Brig. That honestly, I don't think it would hurt them too much. Like if you have armor, maybe then the headshot thing applies. I don't know, maybe.
Or we just apply it to everyone who's not called Roadhog and fuck that guy. Like, just fuck that guy.
Let's just delete Roadhog.
I just think that, like, I do think though, non-trolling, I do think that's just a Roadhog problem. That's just like, you need to sort out Roadhog, guys. Like, we have not sorted out Roadhog. I'm in a ranty mood now because like we went it's season 2 of Overwatch. It was like Hog Orisa meta, and everyone was like, fuck this shit. This is ass. This is like the worst Overwatch. It was like one shot meta. Everyone's like, I'm getting one shot by Sojourn, Hanzo, and Roadhog, and I hate it. And everyone was in unanimous agreement that it was like one of the worst metas we've ever had in the history of Overwatch. It was like just like the one shot meta. And the devs were like, all right, we're listening. We're gonna change it around. We're gonna rework Roadhog, and he's gonna be more team play oriented. And then they cooked. It was tasted fucking awful. It came back and it was like, yeah, he now vapes all the time, and he's got a pig pen that slows you. His hook is 6 seconds now. It's like, it was used to be like 8 seconds. Now it's 6 seconds. And by the way, now he's gonna take less headshot damage too. And it's like we've ended up somehow. Roadhog is like twice as strong as he was at season 2 when we all fucking hated him, and somehow we're back here now. Like, fuck this guy. Nobody likes when this guy's meta. Nobody likes it.
Dude, SVB's just pulled off the gloves. He's like, hey, this discussion's over. We're fucking talking about how we need to kill Hog. I agree with you. As I said, I hate Roadhog as much as the next guy, as much as SVB. But it's just like, I'm just like, I think these changes overall are a net positive, and I think they're going to work really well for certain heroes. I'm just worried about the effect of them on other heroes, especially the problematic ones that we've already been dealing with. Because I think Malga is going to be interesting in this meta as well, because once again, his ability to be punished by everyone else is going to get worse.
He has armor, right? Like 100.
Yeah, but that's less 100. Like, he's still
No.
like,
My point is like he still gets affected by the change and also the headshot thing, and
yeah. So
Maybe.
that's my fear. It's good for some of these other heroes, and like, enabling.
But you have to think about the fact that Malga is mostly like a tank buster tank. I feel like, at least you kind of want to shoot the tank, but now you're gonna deal 30% less against most tanks, right? So I feel like maybe it's not that big of a deal, to be honest. I feel like the biggest winners are gonna be like Reinhardt, Winston maybe
meta.
Ball,
Yeah.
Ball, because Ball can also trigger the passive a lot easier. Plus they're buffing him, so yeah, maybe. I think, yeah. But talking about Roadhog, like the thing is, Roadhog is really strong in solo queue, and he's a huge pop stomper. But in pro play, he's not, right? So I feel like you can hard nerf Roadhog, and then he's gonna be useless, right? But I feel like it's inevitable that at some point at some time there's gonna be a Roadhog meta anyways, right? Like they're always gonna change something about Roadhog, and they're gonna be playable. To be honest, I don't feel like on tank, I don't feel like Roadhog is that insane anymore, to be honest, because I can go Malga, for example, or even Orisa. I have like a few options, right, to deal with
Those 3 heroes all suck. You just named 3
Yeah,
heroes
true,
that no one wants to play with.
I agree. I don't disagree. But I feel like Roadhog should never be meta. I think it should be playable, maybe, right? But if he's
Yeah, I
meta, the
agree.
game gets boring, right? Yeah.
Every hero should be playable in some capacity, right? Like, we're talking about like the nitty gritty of like, the top rank of everything. Like, the thing I'm excited for is the 2 weeks where people try and work out which tank's the best. And then I'm going to be really sad when the 2 weeks finish, and it's probably going to be like everyone's going to end up playing the same thing. That's what happened in season 9. And then everyone ended up just playing like only Malga, right? In season 9 or some shit like that. That's when it gets boring, and that's when the frustration happens. Sorry, bro.
Yeatle?
Sorry, I'm having a brain fart.
No, just anything to vibe off of that. Maybe you want to talk about the ball a little bit, because obviously you said you've been kind of enjoying ball right now, and there's only buffs coming. So is it ball season?
It's a little bit of a mix, because like I said earlier, in combination with the knockback and then the damage versus armor change, he gets a little bit of a nerf there, but he did get I think it's a boop damage buff. Not that big. It's 10, 50 to 60. And the pile driver is a nice one because the pile driver lockout was, I think that's a similar time or more in the direction of what he used to do way back in Overwatch 1. Like he used to have a longer lockout on pile driver. So that's nice. The minefields where it gets crazy because maybe I'm just so used to like minefield, like the worser states of minefield. But I'm starting to think that it probably didn't need all this because so it got a health buff, first of all, in season 9. So now it's harder to kill mines, which is great. I think that was amazing. But now it's gonna get a damage buff, so it 2-shots people again. Which, okay, that's a bit much, I think, because I feel like mines were okay. But then you also add in the knockback buff. I think they're like doubling it or something, some
They
crazy
doubled
number.
it. It went from 5
6 to 10,
10.
6 to 10, 6 to 10. No, 5 to
Oh,
10.
so
You're
you
right.
did
You're
it.
right. No, you're
Yeah,
right. You're
5
right.
to
It's
10,
5
yeah.
to 10. You're right.
People are gonna hit mines and go flying. It's gonna be crazy. It seems like a double-edged sword though, because like if someone's on the edge of minefield, like if you go for a minefield pile driver, they're gonna try to run away, right? And then they get hit by the mine on the edge. They're just gonna go flying across the map out of the minefield and elsewhere. Or it could be the opposite effect where they just get jumbled, ping-ponged everywhere. So I don't really know about that one. Overall, I think they overdid it with mines, to be honest. But hey, maybe minefield against tanks is a better option. Maybe that's what it is.
I think Bo is like a huge winner, especially with these changes.
100%.
Junker Queen also is getting some buffs, which are the shout reduction on cooldown. They said, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
I feel like that's really important, right? Because how much is it right now? I don't know. I need to check it. And you can shout while doing stuff, which is really cool quality of life. I like that one.
That one's nice.
That one is nice. But I think Bo is a huge winner because he can trigger the passive. He has a lot of armor. His biggest problem, I feel like, is a lot of things that poke him. And just the buffs and the mines and stuff, just two-shotting. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like probably maybe Bo meta, maybe Winston's gonna be meta, maybe Reinhardt. But I feel like it's just gonna boil down to Roadhog or Reese or Malga again. So it always ends up like that, you know. It always boils
Yeah.
down to the
If we play Queen Ball, honestly, I'm fucking down. I'm down for those heroes to be sick. Even if Wrecking Ball, like I hate Wrecking Ball. I think mines are the stupidest ultimate in the game. Sorry, Yeatle. Like I fucking hate getting
Right.
slammed and then getting hit by a mine and then getting bounced into another mine and they last for fucking an eternity. But I don't know. Like I'm down to I just want to do anything other than the 3 problematic heroes, which is Roadhog, Maga, Orisa. Like I'm fine for any of those things, even if they're hard meta. So I kind of like how heavy-handed with the buffs the devs were with Queen and Bull because I think they're fun heroes and I think people want to play those heroes. So
more
Yeah.
nerfs to Malga, Roadhog, and Orisa, more buffs to the other characters. They're fun.
yeah.
I agree.
True.
Prioritize fun. Make Overwatch fun again.
I
I'm
agree.
worried. I'm worried about the embarrassing situation that has it happened to everyone. You can't lie. When you're like the minefield goes down, the ball's dead, the fight's over, and you're like, I'm gonna walk into these mines for some ult charge, and you go like tip tip tip, and then you go bonk bonk, but like, you're like you want to walk into one, and then it just like starts bouncing. You're like, I have done that. Sadly, too many times where I'm like, guys, just he supports, come here, and then it's like me on the kill feed, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, that wasn't what I intended. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
The
Yeah,
environmental potential is going to be crazy too. Imagine a map like Ilios. Someone hits the mine on the edge, right off the map.
Oh yeah.
They're going to go flying.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll work like a Junkrat conk as well, because like it always sends you up, right? Like the Junkrat conk, like it always sends you up at like a certain angle. I hope it doesn't just like start conking you off the map.
Yeah.
We'll find out. We'll find out. I want to return a little bit because clearly I have not ranted enough. I want to return a little bit to the reception because I do think I want to address it, which is just that like I feel like as a community we don't give things a chance. We're just really fucking miserable, and I'm a little bit annoyed by the constant doomering. And I'll throw some shade here and like some sneak disses, which is just that like there's like 2 sets of people, right? There's like the content creators and there's the like normal players who are complaining. And there's like content creators who kind of established a brand on being doomery, and I get it. Get your money and like you get like pigeonholed because like once you become the doomer guy, and then if you were to say something positive, your fan base would be like, whoa, you're being positive? That's not why I signed up to your YouTube channel. I want you to fucking shit on this game and tell me how awful they are. So I get it. They get trapped in the doomer cycle. But reacting so negatively to like any proposed change. I'm just tired of it. I'm just tired of like how badly we take any new major development and just find the worst way to interpret it immediately. We're like, how could this be done? How could this result in the worst thing? And let's talk about that. Let's like rant about that and talk about how the game is dead and it's like they're easy making the game easy for the casuals. And then there's like the player base who respond as well, who are just like, seems like they're just like wanting to hate on Overwatch. I can understand why content creators get stuffed in the pigeonhole, but like for a player, dude, there's like 100 great, fantastic games that you can play if you just don't like Overwatch. If you just like find that your reaction to every Overwatch change, that you fucking hate it. There's so many good games out there. I'm imploring you as an Overwatch content creator to play other games if you don't like this game anymore. And the response I usually get from those people is that they say, oh, nothing hits like Overwatch. That's why I play Overwatch. And it's like,
So
well,
then what's the
if
problem?
yeah, it's like, so if the problem, if like there's like 100 amazing game of the years all around for you to play, and you still are like, well, nothing hits like Overwatch though, and then you still just complain all day, every day on every social media, like maybe the problem is you, maybe you're just a little bitch, and maybe you need to find happiness. Maybe you just need to find happiness, my guy. Like, I get being negative, I get being skeptical of the stuff the devs do. Like, I am critical, I would like to think, a lot. Like, very reasonably all the time on this podcast we complain and criticize, but like this whole attitude of just like interpreting everything in the worst way possible, I think just harms the game overall, because it just makes the devs less inclined to do good things, because they'll know that like, well, people aren't going to be fucking happy if we change anything. They're just going to fucking be miserable and yell about it. So like, I'm all for criticizing it, but let's just wait until we actually play it and then be like, oh, actually this doesn't feel so good. So I'm a little bit upset that we just like, yeah, like the social media takes are just not good. Just not good. I'll leave it at that.
I'll just say, go play League of
yeah.
Legends for a little bit. See,
Yeah.
let me know how you feel.
I've played a little bit League recently. I don't know. I like. I feel like if people take games too seriously, they're gonna be miserable, right? Like I get it being competitive and stuff, but like you can have fun once in a while. People just play this game, especially content creators. They play 10 hours, 8 hours a day, and then they burn out. They're like, I hate everything. Oh, obviously you hate everything. But you know, to be honest, like if so many people always complain, you know, maybe there is something to it. You can't deny at the end of the day. You know, people are unhappy, but I feel like it's the same people being unhappy all the time, right? So, what really gets to me isn't about people complaining. What really gets to me is when you actually do some criticism or you say, you know, I'm happy with this instantly. Blizzard show, paid by Blizzard, paid off NDA. You can't talk shit about the game. You are forced to say nice things. I'm like, maybe I just like the changes, you know. Maybe, you know, the changes, you know, appeal to me, right? So that's what I don't like. If somebody's unhappy with the game, you know, go around and say you're unhappy with the game. I don't mind it, and I think it's okay to always have some sort of criticism. But I feel like the Overwatch community, especially, just has never forgiven the Overwatch dev team and are constantly, you know, really being very, very critical all the time without giving them a chance, right? And I feel like no matter what changes they make, even if it's the best thing ever, people will still be unhappy, right? So I feel like I agree with SVB.
For me, I think the biggest frustration I have with it is you can be upset, but especially this is more directed to content creators, because like players that they're allowed to be upset. But I see too many people complaining and not giving meaningful feedback of what they would like to see done. They shit on everything, but don't ever give like, here's what I would do, or here's how you fix it. Like it boils down, especially when, you know, the 6v6 debates happen where like people like just bring it back. They just need to bring it back and then balance properly. And it's like, well, how do you balance properly with two tanks in the game, right? That's the big issue. So it's like, I feel like too many times this kind of stuff happens where people just aren't giving, they're entirely negative, but not giving any meaningful solutions, because the reality is there aren't perfect solutions. Multiplayer games are never going to be balanced. They're never going to be perfect. There's always going to be something to complain about. So I think it's just frustrating. But as you guys have said, it's the same people complaining. Some players like to make it their life goal to complain. I swear they complain about it on Reddit more than they actually play the game these days. So it's like, I just ignore the noise a lot of these days. I just don't go on Reddit. I like to see the public sentiment and like get a gauge for what's going on, but it's just the same shit going around and around.
Yeatle?
Yeah, I think people just like to given to immediate emotion and outrage rather than weigh both sides of, okay, this was good, this was bad. Just to name an example, like I did a review on Overwatch 2 like a year after, and overall, like I think Overwatch 2 was in a better state than the end of Overwatch 1, which isn't hard to do, right?
Yeah,
Overwatch
it's
1,
free.
we weren't getting much content. It's free, as well as like the new heroes, new maps. PvE sucked, but just going over all these things. And at the end of it, I gave my review of I like the direction where the game is going. And I think the fact that they're also doing fast balance changes is something we've never had before. And we probably have faster balance changes than most games, which is amazing. But even at the end of that, I still got people that are like, oh, you're a shill, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, bro, I was playing both sides here. Anyways, there's always just going to be people that complain no matter what. And I think it's up to us as the content creators to be fair and play both sides, but play both sides logically. Don't be nice to Blizzard just for being nice. It's like, okay, they're giving us content, they're doing balance updates, and I do like this. I'm gonna say I like this rather than just every time, oh, they buffed Roadhog. I fucking hate Roadhog. Next week, oh, they buffed Orisa. I hate Orisa. It's just too much. It's too easy to complain. And I think people need to play both sides a little bit more.
Well, that is
Classic SVB bringing 4 shills on his podcast and just sucking Blizzard's dick for 3 hours. Jesus Christ, they should have invited some real people that could criticize this game.
People that speak the truth.
People that speak the truth, bring back 6v6.
it's, I mean, the shield thing is so bizarre, like, because I just cannot wrap my head around the idea that people genuinely think they're like paying us a retainer. Like, you think like there's a salary that they're giving out, and I think there's like the extreme, conspiracy end of it, which is like these guys are getting literally paid, which to me that's insane, because I mean, clearly I'm within the system enough to see how bad shit that would even be. Like, to be able to, like, people leak the early access to shit, right? And imagine how hard it would be to get like 100 people that you're paying to never mention that my check from Blizzard came through today. Looks like I can buy myself a new keyboard. Like, there's that level, but then there's maybe the more, let's say, the reasonable side of it, who'd be like, oh, it's not that you're getting paid, it's that you want like the favors that Blizzard give you. You want like your access to stuff, and you want paid trips to California. And it's like that we can talk about that. Like, that I understand that is an incentive for content creators to be in the good books of Blizzard, but like that to me that only really affects actually the smaller sized creators, whereas these accusations get labeled at like some of these really big guys here, like all these guys that I've got on the call right now. Like, I hate to break it to you guys, but these guys are like way bigger than like what Blizzard's giving them. Like, what Blizzard's offering them is just like a free flight, like for like flats and Emong. They're like they make more money not going to these things. Like, they make more money not streaming and continuing to stream than they would by going to these events. Like, this is what they're offering is not in any way enough to offset their livelihoods. Like, the idea that this would influence at like a 500-pound trip would influence like one of the biggest trades in Overwatch to suddenly shill for Blizzard is just like so laughable. Compared to the reality, as we've spoken about, of how much better negativity sells. Like, people love a negative headline. They love like, Overwatch is dead, they fucked up the game. Like, just look at any metric, you're gonna get a lot more clicks on something that's like, this is fucking awful, than you're gonna be like, is this reasonable? This could be good. This could be like, you're never gonna get that. So like, the money, if anywhere the money is in being a fucking hater. If there's anywhere there's money, is being a fucking hater and just being like, this is awful no matter what they do. So I think that, like, I get it. You should hold content creators accountable 100%. If you feel like they're being influenced by their opinion, 100%. But right now, really, the people who are more shilling is the people who are just shilling to be a hater, because that's where their money is buttered. So I feel like we need to kind of be careful. I'll just say it to other content creators, be fucking careful about like the journalistic integrity that comes with like covering Overwatch. Like, you have a responsibility, like and this is very like a issue nowadays, I think, with like content creators, where like we kind of get our opinions thrown in on all sorts of global world issues. And it's like, when you have a platform, be fucking careful what kind of like misinformation you're spreading, because like we have a platform and that comes with a responsibility. So be fair. TLDR.
I will also say, for me, I've been doing this. I've been playing Overwatch for 8 years. It's because I just love the game. right? Like I like the game, so it's like, why would I be overly negative about it all the time? It's just like I enjoy the game. I don't agree with all decisions. I'm critical of them. I was critical about this upcoming midseason patch. I think it's going to be too much. I don't think it's going to go well, and I'm worried about the blowback it's going to have. But at the end of the day, you know, people aren't nice because they want positive things. Most of the people, and I will say this about a lot of the content creators, people are nice just because they're nice human beings and they don't attack the developers because of like things that they don't always agree with. Like, and it's not like the developers are doing things directly to affect us. They're trying to make the best game possible as well. Don't always agree with all their decisions, but you know, that's the way things are. And just being overly negative doesn't solve anything. Almost ever, right? Unless you're a tank player and you complain for a year and then you eventually get a mid-season patch buff that makes your hero great. So it's like, for the most part, it doesn't do much. And as you said, SBB, people aren't doing it to be shills. If you really wanted to make money, we would all go get a normal job. Not many people are really making big bank doing this shit.
How many hours is that? Was it like 8 to 7, 8 to 5? What is it?
Oh yeah, 8 to, 8 to
what
5,
was the
9 to
normal
5?
job schedule? 8 to 6.
Yeah, one
Sorry,
of
you
the
know.
normal people hours.
Whatever.
Sure, we got one of those in chat somewhere.
Some of you guys must work. How else could you fund our degenerate lifestyle? Okay. Any other thoughts on that? I know I apologize for derailing. I just been a bit frustrated. I just think I think for me personally, I feel this way more strongly now because I care less about Overwatch than I've done in a long time, because like I have other ventures, right? Like I'm focusing a lot on my other video essay channel that's, you know, thankfully done very well. So like my livelihood isn't tied to Overwatch. And so I do this for fun, and I do this because I enjoy the podcast. I feel like people appreciate the podcast and the space it does in the community. So I do it because I'm like, you know what? I think it's a good thing for the community. So like all the more I see it and I'm like, why are you just like creating drama for no reason? Like, why are you just making trouble for the sake of making trouble? Can we not just be fucking reasonable? Like, can we not just be like, this is good, this is bad? Anyways, Bogur?
That's fair, SBB, but if you thought of fuck you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, fuck you. Nice opinion, but I was thinking like, no matter what we say, people are still gonna do the same thing, right? They're still gonna complain. And to be honest, I think complaining and criticizing the game, some people take it too far, obviously. But I think it's important at the end of the day to have like, if obviously, right? I'm just, as Custa said, there's a few things that really annoy me. I really hate people just saying do this or do that without actually saying how to implement or giving feedback. It's always like bring back 6v6. Yeah, but if you bring that back, then some people that like 5v5 are going to complain that they want to bring back 5v5. It's not that simple, right? It's really hard to, like, obviously I don't want to discuss it too much because it wouldn't be fair to Samito to discuss 6v6 without him present. But also, I just really dislike when you say something positive about the game as a content creator. You're instantly labeled as shill, as I said. It's just I'm just tired of it, right? You just start ignoring it at some point, right? It's just like people, like just some crazy people just sitting outside just screaming, you know, the world is ending all the time. Like, maybe, but you know, just leave me alone. Let me play Winston, right? I can't do anything about this, right? So yeah, that is my thoughts.
Yeah, and to be clear, because I know people I know how YouTube comment works. Criticism is very good. Please criticize Overwatch. I will always criticize Overwatch. Just do it reasonably and for reasonable things, not just fucking going into the practice range and being like, look at the hitbox. Like, just do it with some semblance of reasonableness.
It doesn't have to be criticism. It can be feedback, right? Like, you can have negative feedback and stuff like that. You can have positive feedback, right? Like, it all comes and goes, right? And like, all this feedback is given, you know, like you call us shills and that kind of stuff for, you know, going to Blizzard campus and like doing this NDA stuff. It's like, there's a lot of feedback where it's like, we don't like this, or like this doesn't work, this isn't fun, and that kind of stuff, because like that we agree, like it's not always perfect. It's not always just about being negative. It's about being positive, and it's about giving meaningful feedback. And that's sort of like my biggest frustration, as Berg said.
There's one thing Overwatch players like to do is complain when their main isn't good. So like, we're always fucking hating on the minute that our main is no longer playable. It's like, fuck this. Poor Args is trying to start like a revolution on Twitter, I think.
Bro.
He's like, fix Hanzo. He's like, guys, please fix Hanzo. Let's boycott the skins, please. Fix Hanzo.
Hey, to be
To
fair,
be
they,
fair.
they did Hanzo dirty. They did him
To
dirty.
be fair, I agree. I think there's a few characters in the game right now that are so
Yeah.
horrible, like Junkrat, Hanzo, Mercy. I feel like these characters definitely need some changes, right? So, to be fair, they've kind of been ignoring them.
Yeah,
I
I
think
feel
they're
bad. Go
reworking
ahead.
Hanzo. That I have a little theory there. I think they're reworking Hanzo because
I agree.
a really good argument is like, why does Widow still one shot but Hanzo doesn't? And they haven't touched Hanzo since they took away his one shot. So that
Bring
might be
back Scatter
yeah.
Arrow. Bring
No,
back Scatter.
no, bro. I feel like everyone who says bring back Scatter weren't fucking there in the dark days of 2016 when Raxi was just fucking blowing tanks up.
Bro, to be fair, when I would get tilted, I would just queue up Hanzo and just insta-kill people. That was like therapy, you know?
I just have a beautiful memory of Eichenwald third point, an Orisa coming out of spawn, and I just scatter arrow, just insta kill the Orisa. Just insta kill her with a scatter arrow.
It was
great.
so funny.
The one time that's allowed is when it fights the greater evil. It's all good.
Yeah, the greater good.
Absolutely.
The bring back scatter arrow is like peak evidence that like anything that was in the past automatically gets exalted to a level that like it just never was the fucking thing. Like anyone who played scatter arrow thought it was the worst fucking ability in the game. But give it 2 years since it's removed, and people will be like, "Bring it back."
Honestly, it did like 400 damage, right? If you hit like every scatter, like think about that. You had like a 400 damage arrow on like a what was it, like an 8-second cooldown or some shit. It was crazy if you were good with it, and just like one shot supports.
It was also like super RNG as well.
It one-shot
Yeah.
tanks as well. It's one-shot
Yeah.
everything. It was insane.
It was just super RNG. It was super
Magnetic arrow.
unreliable. Magnetic
Somebody
arrow.
in chat said magnetic arrow. That's the change.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's just like 300 damage, and it heat seeks, and it explodes and scatters. So just give it everything. Give it everything.
And hinders.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this discussion before we move on, fellas? No. Okay. Let's talk then about some of this comp stuff, because you mentioned at the start of the stream about a lot of the hype kind of was infringed upon, let's say, by the wide narrow matchmaking group changes where people were like, especially at the highest, I think this was a problem that really affected the high elo a lot more. People were just not able to queue, or if they were queuing, it was for many hours. So how do you guys feel about it? Do you feel like they've added some changes, they've kind of changed around? How do you guys feel? Do you feel it's fixed now, or thoughts? Custa, I'll go to you first.
I don't really duo a lot. I did do some of the wide group stuff, and I ran into the issues that other people did. Like even like I was trying to wide group with someone who was like Diamond or something like that, and the game's just like 20-minute queues. Like in theory, the wide group stuff is awesome, right? You can play with your friends, but anytime queues go like above 5 minutes, especially for like casual players, that's just too long to be waiting in a queue. So I think it just isn't working as intended. Like I give the Blizzard team like the benefit of the doubt that like I think the system in theory was great. When we heard it and everything was put up, it sounded great. The only issues was the top end stuff where it's like people think you should be able to do it, the top ranks. Like, I think it's good in theory if they make it so that you can duo at the top ranks as well without being wide group and the queues aren't that bad, all for it. But if you're going to try and segment the queues between solo queues and group queues and like narrow queues and wide queues, sort of essentially, that's great. But it needs to function in the way that it was going to work. And if the queues aren't going to support that, then I'd rather go back to the old system.
That's fair. Bogur, you were caught in some of that hell, weren't you?
And what hell? With the
Q
queue?
hell.
No, I didn't really do queue much, but I like the idea behind it, right? I like what they're trying to do, but I haven't used it much, especially wide group queuing with everyone. Like if you're trying to play with friends, if the queues are like 2 hours long, I haven't tried like playing with bronzes or anything, but if it's like an hour long queue, then just there's no point, right? There's might as well just play quick play at that point. I like not stacking in GM and champion. I think that's good, and I feel like it's like separating the queues, but without actually having two separate like. It's separate queues in the system, but it's not like in League where you have a team queue and a solo duo queue, right? So I like the idea. I think the execution was a bit hit or miss, and I agree with Custa. Like, if the queue times are too long, just go back to the old system at that point. Like, I think queue times are the most important thing. If a low ranked player needs to wait 5 minutes or 10 minutes for a game, that's cooked. They need to be instantly or like really fast in the game. Because a lot of people don't have time to waste sitting in queue. We have time to waste, and especially when you're high elo, whatever. People complain about queue times. It's normal. There are many top 500 players, but lower elo players, them waiting in queue, I think that's an issue. So I haven't tested too much, but if the queue times are really cooked, maybe it needs to be changed.
I agree. Yeatle?
Yeah, maybe they could be a little bit more lenient on the wide queue, right? Because if the idea is that if you go in these crazy like wide group queues, that the matches are going to be crazy, and you don't get that much like SR in the first place, you're mostly doing it for the experience. I think just make it a little bit more generous in how wide and maybe uneven the games can be. I also think maybe this is a hot take or not, but I think like in GM, I'm not a fan of duoing being a thing because I think that if you end up getting a peak or a career high duoing, did you really earn it?
To
Like
be,
maybe
to
your duo is way
I agree
lower.
with that. I agree with that. Very good.
I kind of agree in the sense I don't agree. Okay, I don't agree in the sense that some people don't care, right? Some people just want to have fun with friends, right?
Hmm.
But if purely from a competitive aspect, I think having 5 souls against 5 solos is honestly a good idea. But again, there's so many people that are GM and stuff. They don't care about being rank 1, right? They just want to play with a friend, and suddenly they need to swap accounts or play on lower elo or whatever. So I kind of agree, but also like don't necessarily agree 100%.
Hmm. And another thing I think is that like if the queue times are a problem in like the higher ranks, low key, I'm in favor for quantity over quality for like the games, just because like the games are never going to be perfectly even. Like even if they make it like a purely GM1 lobby versus a purely GM1 team versus purely GM1 team, like there's always some factor of, oh, maybe your tank is a hog one trick, or like yada yada yada. Like I remember right before season 9, I went on this rant about this exact topic because I was in a 1 hour queue. I was literally waiting for a game, and I got the game, and I'm like, all right, 1 hour for this supposed to be super balanced game, and somebody leaves. And it's just like, oh well, fuck me. I waited in this 1 hour queue for no reason. Like, I just think it the quality doesn't matter as much. Like, I think it's better to just have like 5 minute queues in GM. That's my
It's
opinion.
I kind of agree. I agree. I think it's really hard to people want balanced queues in high elo and also short queues, which is impossible because you have like you have 50 people at any point queuing from top 500, right? So I think just playing the game more is gonna be way better for the stream, for content creators, for people in general than whatever. I think people complaining are gonna complain anyways, right? Always are gonna complain. Either the queues are too long or games are imbalanced. That is why I never check profiles at the beginning of the game. I just whatever happens happens. Just
Yeah,
go in and
I'm the
play the
same way.
game, right? Because there's no point. I'm just gonna get tilted, right? Just play the game, right? As long as the average SR is balanced, I think it's okay, right? Just play.
We're also like, I think the biggest issue, especially when you're in like the masters, like high masters into low GM, the biggest issue is like Smurfs. Like people, there's so many people who are just way higher than their account is willing to speak for. So like the number of times that like I'm like, oh, what's going on? Like, oh, we're winning a game really strong, and my duo are both players who have seemed very good at the game, and they're out of voice and they're just crushing the lobby. It's like this is probably just like two good players who are just like playing on Smurfs or something like that and just crushing the game. And like, how does the matchmaker have a balance for that? Like, I'm a huge believer the game queue should never go over 10 minutes. Like 5 minutes is even then like a little too long. But if queue's going over 10 minutes, as you said, I'd rather play a shitty game in 10 minutes than wait in queue. And I know that's not a completely echoed sentiment by a lot of people. They want to play balanced games, they want it to be perfect, but overall, I just want to play more games, and I think that's what a lot of other games try and do. They just make matches rather than just trying to make everything perfect.
I agree with you. About Smurfs, I know League, for example, has a Smurf queue, right? So there's stuff that happens in the background that's like, okay, these people are way too good at the game. Maybe we should put them in a separate queue. I know maybe it's possible to do the same thing in Overwatch because I don't think Smurfs are the reason why the game is dying or anything, but I understand why it's really annoying. Some games are just a complete stomp when they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like this issue is one that is one of these classic multiplayer game issues that will always be debated one way or the other. Like when it's like you should allow stacking or don't allow stacking, right? Because it's like when you don't allow stacking in GM, people are like, oh, I want to play with my friends. You allow stacking in GM, and then people are like, well, is that, that feels a bit unfair for the solo queue player. And same goes for the time quality versus quantity, right? Like, it's like, I think we've bounced around on this actually within the course of Overwatch too. It's hard to remember sometimes. I'm pretty sure there was a season where they like prioritized just like getting you into games ASAP, and then people were like, yo, I'm getting some shit awful games. And then they were like, all right, we're going to dial it back. We're going to give you some really quality games. And then people were like, whoa, what the fuck? I'm waiting so long in queue. So I feel like that's one of those issues where like whatever you do, the community will complain.
Yeah.
But I will say that with Overwatch, it should prioritize quantity of games, because again, as someone who's been queuing a lot of Dota, I'm often impressed by how quickly they still give me games. Even like I queue Dota at like 2 a.m. Europe, right? Like 2 a.m. and that's 2 a.m. UK time, so that's like 4 a.m. in some parts of Europe, right? And I'll still get a game within like 3 or 4 minutes. And it's actually pretty cool where I've got Dota Plus. So one of the features that comes with Dota Plus, you play for it like subscription, and if you queue up, you actually get, when your game pops in Dota, you have to confirm that you want this game. Dota Plus allows you to actually, like, it tells you what kind of game you're about to get into. It says like, the quality of this game is, ideal, perfect, good, pretty good. And it'll then say like, the balance of the players is, this, like, it's very good, it's perfect, it's not so good. And the behavior of the players is XYZ. It's like the behavior of the players in this lobby is not so good, is very good. So you kind of can like weigh up the decision, and then because you have Dota Plus, you can choose to decline it if you want without getting a penalty of like being put like deprioritized in the queue. Like, it was just interesting. Just thought something I'd throw out, but the point I was gonna make is that it's okay. I don't mind waiting 5 minutes in queue for a Dota game, because the Dota game is like fucking an hour. It's like 45 minutes at best. I mind waiting 5 minutes for a game that can end in 7. Right, like that, there's a problem there. So like, I don't mind if like in a mobile model, waiting a while, because I know I'm going to be in the game for a while. But the problem with Overwatch is like, anytime you're going above like, even I would say like 2 minutes for a game that they're pushing actively to be like 10 minutes or less, it's kind of unacceptable to be spending like more time in queue, or even a comparable amount of time in queue for a game that doesn't last that long. So I come down on Yeatle's side of like, you got to give people fast games.
And we're even at the top end. I would say the lower ranks you go, people are absolutely just like, I just want to play the game, right? Like, they're, where we care more about winning and losing in RSI, and I think the balance of the game more than probably most people. I think that was a lot of frustration that a lot of this YQ did to a lot of people, is they're like, why am I waiting 30 minutes for a queue? It's like, we're kind of used to that, because like we've been through those days where it's like that was just a common factor. But for a lot of people, I'm sure their queues have been very quick throughout like the history of Overwatch. So that is the thing that I think needs to get identified first, of like, they cannot be having these ridiculously long queues for like gold stacks, or like gold and plat and diamond friends can't play together.
That's fair. Bogur, any more thoughts on this?
I don't know. I have no thoughts, head empty. I think you've said it.
See, what the EU thing I was talking about, now it's 9 p.m. for me. It's late for Bogur now, so he's glazing.
It's 11 p.m.
He's glazing. Yeatle, how about you? Any more thoughts on this?
No, that's about it.
Okay. I will, since we kind of mentioned Smurfs a little bit, I will also mention cheaters. I got Warren in chat. He's like, talk about the fucking cheaters. There's so many more cheaters right now. First, I'll just ask you guys if you do feel like there has been more cheaters, and we can actually discuss the substance.
I want to talk about this because for some reason I've noticed, maybe because DPS players obviously play DPS when they notice a lot more, but DPS players always say there's a bunch of cheaters. I'm not saying they're wrong, but for me as a tank player, I never even for a second bother looking at if somebody's cheating. I just die, respawn, and go again. Right? I never notice cheaters. It's just blacked out for me. So I'm just chilling, right? So that is my experience playing tank. And I feel like DPS players, some DPS players, I'm not saying Warren specifically right now in chat, maybe there are more cheaters. Maybe there are more cheaters in NA. Maybe there's less in EU. But like I feel like a lot of DPS just always say that there's a cheater on the enemy team instead of accepting, maybe they got cooked,
calling
right?
wire. You guys saw that shit live on broadcast.
They got cooked.
I'm with Bogur. I haven't had any issues with cheaters. I don't really think the only time I'd recognize a cheater is if it's like really blatantly obvious. But I'm like Bogur. I don't really like go searching for it.
like a support and a tank thing. Like I don't think we like look for it. I think it's way easier to notice for DPS players.
Yeah.
Yeatle?
I feel like it's usually if they're on Widowmaker that's the dead giveaway. Like if someone
Yeah.
just popping off like stupidly on Widow, it's like, all right, well, GG, I guess. But otherwise, they're probably getting clapped because they don't know how to play their hero. But Widow's an easy one. Yeah, delete Widowmaker. That's what I think. Solve
It's the
solve the
takeaway.
cheater issue.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this is just, see, everyone's got their pet peeves. It always comes out in Overwatch. You start mentioning a thing, and like, Yeatle is like, Widowmaker. He's like, here's the Widowmaker. He's like, fuck that guy. Fuck that. Fuck that hoe.
Just dive them.
In
Yeatle.
the-
What are you playing ball? Come on.
Bro, I ran into a Widow yesterday. Fuck, I think it was like in a diamond lobby or something. And I was hitting with boop and slam the whole time. They were just getting double pocketed by Brig and I think a Mercy. Just headshot after headshot after headshot. The guy was cheating. But it just like, I fucking hate this shit, man. You know?
Yeah.
Hey, Widow.
Yeah, I think in defense of the DPS players, I think me as well. I'm just not habitually thinking about cheaters. I think DPS players are more attuned to it, especially because if you think about like hit scan and the transference of hit scan from like other games, like stuff like cheating, like you're always gonna be very acute towards it. If you're like a CS:GO player or like a Valorant player, you're always gonna be thinking about like, yo, that didn't seem right. Like what he did there doesn't seem right. I don't even. I don't even look, right? So if I die to someone, I don't watch the fucking kill cam. I don't know how many people watch the kill cam. Like I never. I just like go next. I'm watching my teammates. I'm like, look at this fucking moron. I'm watching him waste his cooldowns. No wonder I'm dying. That's what I'm doing when I die. B. Again, I don't play a lot of DPS. I mostly play tank support. So yeah, I don't notice like the duels of like, oh, that guy's hitting shots like crazy. I'm just like, I died to mass CC or something. And then C, I don't think I'm very attuned at understanding what a cheat looks like. Like if it's a soldier tac visor and he's like locking on it run, okay, I can tell. But then so often people, like I'll be in games and people will like in my DPS will be like, oh, that guy's cheating 100%. And I go back and watch the replay and I'm like, I can't really tell. Like he could be very good. He could be cheating. I don't really know. And like I'm not Kefri. I don't have the expertise of being like, oh, hey, look, 0.25. There's no way this guy could fucking do this. Look at this happening. I did have one guy the other day that I was like, this guy is definitely cheating. He's like pre-aiming and like walling and stuff. But generally, I don't know what to look for. I'm gonna be real.
Yeah, same. When DPS players watch cheaters, they're like, "Oh, so the way they curved their flick there, that was not natural, right? So probably cheating right there, right? So the way he pre-aimed as well, I'm like, what is this guy talking about?" It's like, but Warren did admit that he might be getting stream sniped, so I think we found the issue.
Damn, Bogur was right. That's crazy.
Yeah, the voices, bro.
Poor Warren does not have the chance to defend himself. But I mean, yeah. That's always a streamer issue. You never know if it's like, is this just me? Like my game's being tossed, or is it like an epidemic across Overwatch? Okay, we can move on from Smurfs and cheaters. Actually, no. There's one thing I did want to bring up while we're on this topic because I think it's been a hot topic in gaming at the moment. How invasive should your anti-cheat be? Because I've seen within Riot, there've been kind of, I think if I remember correctly, I will confess that I've only skimmed this news, but I do know this is a topic of discussion, is that I believe League
As a
of Legends...
cybersecurity expert, I can chime in here.
Yeah, go ahead,
Oh
Bogur.
my god.
No,
They
but
put it on
like,
League, right?
Yeah, they put
Yeah,
it on
so
League.
League is coming
okay.
with Riot's anti-cheat, which is very invasive. So that's the reason why this is being discussed. Go ahead, Bogur.
So Valorant has Vanguard, and Vanguard is a kernel level, right, anti-cheat. So it basically has access to everything on your PC. It has access to everything. So the reason why they do it is to, in general, have more control over against cheaters, and it kind of makes sense because you can't counter cheaters very easily. It's really hard. There's always going to be roundabouts, but with a kernel level, anti-cheat, the thing is, it's way harder to avoid that. And they implemented that to League. The problem with that is that you're giving access to your entire PC to another company, basically, right? So first, like security-wise, you never know, right? You never know what they might be doing. There's been so many scandals throughout times, like companies selling data, companies going somewhere where they shouldn't be, and they decide to implement that to League of Legends as well, which has done a lot of created a lot of issues. One of which. This is one of the issues with having a kernel level anti-cheat is the fact that it can brick your PC. Right now, League of Legends, after adding this thing, it is bricked, and a lot of PCs, a lot of people are having absolutely horrible issues. I tried playing League a bit. I had a bunch of issues with the anti-cheat as well. It's just the thing is, a lot of people don't want cheaters, but also a lot of people don't want to give too much access to the big corporations. So it's kind of hard to battle, right? Like look at games like Tarkov, it is filled with cheaters, and Apex has a lot of cheaters as well, right? So I don't know. I don't know how to solve the cheater problem. I don't think you can, but I don't know. I don't mind too much Vanguard, but I don't mind it right now. Maybe down the line there's gonna be things that happen, and also I haven't had some issues like my PC breaking. If my PC bricked, it would be so horrible, right? I have to like I would lose money. I would have to reinstall stuff. I might lose footage and stuff. It is cooked, right? I think that is a big issue right there.
Custa?
So
Here we go.
I don't know if I should say this on a public place, but I don't give a fuck. Like you wanna. I accept cookies all the time. You wanna see what the fuck's on my computer? Good the fucking luck to you. I ain't got nothing to hide. I have a phone. This shit tracks everything to do with my fucking life.
I agree.
Like
Yep.
already. Like I don't like. I don't
agree.
give a fuck. Like they know everything about my life already.
I agree.
Who cares? Anti-cheat. I fucking love anti-cheat. You know, I've played Valorant, like a lot of Valorant in my time. Very rarely run into a cheater. Like very, very rarely have I ever run into a cheater. So it's obviously doing something right. And I've never had the issue, as Bogur said, I've never had the issue of a bricking my PC or an anti-cheat bricking my PC. So it's like maybe I would feel more worse. Like people saying 0.03% of people have had their computers bricked. I don't know. That sucks. But like as I said, I just don't know enough. Like, and I don't care enough. If I'm being honest, like I'm not gonna like kernel level should not be the standard for games. Like if I was installing Escape from Tarkov, I don't even know who the fuck runs that game. But I'm not giving whoever runs that game kernel level access to my PC. But Riot have kind of earned trust, in my opinion, because of like, you know, they've been pretty good. And I haven't had any issues with Vanguard or Riot since I installed it 4 years ago. So please don't target me for cyber warfare.
No, but you make
Custa-
you make a lot of
Custa-
sense with the phone, yeah.
This is Custa's birthday, and his password is 1234.
Yeah.
What's your mother's maiden name? Or, where were you born? City, but
I trust Bogur as well. Yeah, let me give it to you, buddy.
Yeah, I agree with the phone thing.
What
A lot
was
of
the
people
name
like,
of your first car? Go ahead, Bogur.
What is your first name? Well, I agree with the phone thing. Just by owning a phone, and we're streamers as well. Everyone knows everything about us, anyways, right? So
Yeah.
like in that sense, yeah, it makes sense. But I think the issue, like right now, there isn't an issue, but maybe down the line there will be an issue. And if there is a big issue, it will be really big, right? That is the problem right there. But I agree. I think for the end consumer, for the average consumer, just not having cheaters in your games is a big win, probably.
Yeatle, where do you land?
Yeah, I don't really care too much about it either. I think the most important thing to me is like the level of convenience, because I think I remember when I tried installing it, was it Valorant has it, right? Kernel or something? Yeah, I remember it was a process to install it back then for me. So it's a level of convenience thing.
There's some things that are really annoying. First, that it's always running, and if you turn it off and you want to launch your game, you need to restart your PC. It's super annoying to deal with. And second of all, because always running, you are losing processing power because of it. So if you have a potato PC, you are probably not happy about this, right? For me, with my NASA PC funded by streaming, it's okay. But some random dude that wants to play some Overwatch after they played League, it might lag their game a bit.
Yeah. Go ahead, Custa.
Sorry, just think. People say kernel level is unnecessary, but it also like it works. Like I think Valorant is probably the best FPS game I've ever seen that doesn't have issues with cheaters. So it's like you can say it's unnecessary, but it definitely is doing something in some way, because it's probably harder for cheaters to be able to produce hacks that don't get detected, or at least don't cause problems.
I think when it comes to cheating, any form of like dishonest behavior always comes down to the same spectrum of like invasive versus or inconvenient versus effective, right? It's like if we put like draconian measures before you could play a game of Overwatch, there'd be very few cheaters in Smurfs, right? It was like you have to pay $100 per month to play on an account, and like they have a anti-cheat installed into your computer that like will stare at everything you do. Like we could eliminate cheating completely. Like on the one end of the scale, you could do like the most horrific authoritarian measures and you could eliminate cheating, And then there's the other end of it where it's like we could do nothing, right? We could have near nothing, and there'd be a lot of cheaters. But hey, your data is safe, and your privacy and all that is safe. And I feel like it's always like a case of where do you land on that scale? Like how much do you think is an acceptable loss of your personal freedom to play this video game without fear, right? And I understand that there are a lot of people who are very concerned about their privacy in that sense, and I do not begrudge them that. Like I think that it isn't an invalid thing to be like, I'm actually really concerned about my data privacy because like real talk, your data is like your most valuable commodity that you own. Like unless you're a fucking billionaire or you have like some Bitcoin that you saved up from many years ago, chances are the most valuable thing someone can get on you is your data and your like behavioral patterns and all that, because that is a gold mine of money in the modern era, right? So I get people being protective over it. There's the cynical interpretation, which is kind of what Bogur and Custa are alluding to, which is like, well, everyone's got all your data. Like it's like a fighting. You know what's the metaphor of like trying to hold sand in your hand, right? It's like trying to stop the sand from slipping out. It's a losing battle. Like your data will go somewhere, but that's not to say that you shouldn't try. So I respect that. Like, yeah, I mean, it might be hard, but grip onto that sand, man. Like, preserve it because like it is important. But I guess for the more hardcore gamers, they're kind of like, well, I don't really care. My PC can handle it, and I don't really care if they've got this program running in the background all the time. And there's some level of, I suppose, complacency of trusting this giant corporation that they won't fuck up. Because like the minute that like someone hacks into Riot's database somehow, I don't know the technical terminology, but the minute someone hacks Riot and is like, we now have access to everyone's PC who has Vanguard running, oh boy, oh my, is that like a fucking crisis. But until that happens, people probably won't care.
It happened in Apex, right?
No, it didn't. Okay, so what happened in Apex is that the dude just downloaded some random shit online and got his PC hacked. He just downloaded.
Well, no, it happened to all the. It didn't happen to all the pro players.
There was a.
No, it didn't.
I'm pretty sure it didn't. I think what happened was that they just clicked on a random link, downloaded something random, and it turns out that there was no issue with their anti-cheat. But I'm pretty sure that there's one guy, that cybersecurity dude, the pirate software, went through this guy's PC and was like, oh yeah, you just downloaded something random. That's how I remember it, right? But basically to say, to add on to what SVB said, right now we don't care, and they don't care about Vanguard, but maybe down the line something happens, and when it happens, it's going to be so bad, right? We just put our trust on the corporation. And as somebody who's heard and read about a lot of stories, corporations usually fail us, right? And things go really badly, and then they pay a lot of money. But at the end consumer is the one that's hurting, right? So it's just, I think you don't have to play Valorant if you don't want to, right? But that's how they're doing it. And if you want to play Valorant, you just have to suck it up and do it, unfortunately. And to be honest, there are some benefits. You don't get cheaters. Like, there are barely any cheaters. And there are cheaters, you don't see them, right? So, you don't know that you don't see them. They get they get seen instantly and get banned. Like, I've seen the pop-up screen quite often, right? And yeah, that's it. You can't. There's like 3 things in cybersecurity that people like repeating: confidentiality, integrity, availability. I've learned it in Bulgarian, so I'm a bit scuffed, and I'm also tired. And basically, if you want to limit the access to data that you have, you're also going to make it way less available, right? So I could make a really secure PC and server with all of my data and bury it underground 10 feet under with no internet access, but I won't be accessing it ever. So it has to be balanced, right?
Yeah, I sleep with blissful ignorance. I feel like the people who are the most worried about this stuff are the people who are like, they've done like IT shit in the past, or they actually understand like how accessible they're making their shit and like how that is. I'm just like, well, I'm sure it's people are telling me it's bad, but I probably don't realize how bad it is. And that's like a bad way to live, but it's also like, I'm a huge person who like doesn't like to live in fear. I put my money in the bank. Banks are nowhere near trustworthy as well. They do that shit with my fucking money all the time. But like, what are you gonna do? I just gotta live my life and enjoy it. And if I get fucked, at least I know there's millions of other people getting fucked with me. So misery loves company.
If you're getting fucked, everyone's getting fucked. God bless.
If Riot Vanguard gets fucked and like everyone loses all their data and like bad shit happens, there are millions and millions of people who this is happening to as well. So it's like, that's just life.
If I get fucked, it's an orgy going down right now.
That's it,
I mean, yeah, again, as you said, there's like an ignorance is bliss element to it, where like if you know about the thing, you're like, you know the dangers of it, whereas normal people are like, it's whatever. But like, yeah, to kind of move on from this point, but to summarize, I definitely think that there's like, you should have a healthy skepticism towards corporations. Like if there's any unifying theme in massive corporate disasters, it's that complacency was the number one thing. Like everyone's like, it'll never fail. It's the Titanic, right? It's like it's too good to sink, and then like 5 things happen and then like sinks. Or like over time, like if we look at like famous oil spills, whatever, it's usually just a case of like over time complacency means that like people stop checking, and then the thing breaks down because it's like, well, everyone thought it would just never fail. So I get it. Again, I don't blame anyone who's concerned. I guess complacency has brought us to the point where we're just accept it. And much like so much in the world, we kind of have to like accept something that in an ideal world, we'd be like, no, I don't want TikTok to have my data. But then you're like, ooh, funny cat video. Let me watch that. And then you kind of sacrifice your privacy. So it is what it is. Any more thoughts on this before we move on? Yeatle, anything from your end?
No, that's. I think Custa summed it up pretty well.
The blissful ignorance is fucking wake up and play games.
If everyone gets, if I get screwed, everyone's getting screwed. We're all getting screwed.
Let's hope they don't steal my data specifically. And they take someone else's. You know,
exactly.
Shit, like
we're all in this together, turning into fucking High School Musical or some shit. Okay, let's move on to our final topic then, and then I will let you guys get going, is Mirrorwatch. So this is another thing that was new this season. We haven't discussed it on the podcast yet because it was still pretty fresh. But how do we feel about Mirrorwatch? I know a lot of people are very excited and happy with the changes. Do you like the cooking that was done? Yeatle, I'm going to go to you first.
I think it was cool that they definitely tried something different. I played it with a couple of my casual friends, and they didn't really like it that much. Might have been a me issue because I was on my main, so we might have gotten some sweaty Mirrorwatch games. But I mean, they're trying something new. It's not something that I would play like by myself or play for a whole day or anything like that. But it's a cool little thing. I wonder how much like work and effort was put into it, because you compare like Mirrorwatch to maybe one of the previous PvE events that we used to get. Like, is this like way easier to do? Because if it is, then maybe it's not that bad of a thing to maybe do again in some shape or form. But yeah, it's okay.
Bogur, how about you?
I think it's a good balance. Okay, so we like having them test things. We like it when they let us test stuff, and we had the PTR back in the day, right? So I feel like it's a cool way to test stuff while also making it a fun event, because I feel like a lot of these changes could be implemented to the game, right? I think they have some interesting ideas there, and I enjoy some abilities. I really find it quite funny, the Bastion ult in that mode with the little guy spawning in. Honestly, so making a character that can summon stuff from PvE will be funny. I don't know. I like funny stuff and silly stuff. And what did Reinhardt do? He could damage boost stuff that shoot through the shield, and Mercy can shoot while healing as well on her while she's ulting. I don't know. I think it's really cool, and I think it was really creative, and I think it was really fun as well, right? And I can see some of these things being implemented to the game, or making a character out of some of these things. Like as I said, the Bastion thing is cool. I like the Reinhardt changes. Some of them were cool. There was some cool stuff about Reinhardt, but I just don't remember what it was. What did they do with him? They had the shield, the shatter. Oh yeah, the shatter with insta.
Oh yeah,
the attack speed was cool.
Yeah.
That was funny. Yeah, there was a lot of funny things, to be honest. I like it. I think it's quite fun. And you could also test out the skins. So, win-win. But the thing is, for a lot of these things, from what I know, a lot of the people that worked on them were fired, right? From what I've understood. I've read online. And not the skins, but just I've read that some ex-developers saying this was the last thing I've worked on, right? And we're no longer in the team or something. So I hope they make more stuff like this. I hope that it's not the case, right? Because I think it was quite cool.
Yeah. Go ahead, Custa. You go first.
No, sorry, you go first.
Well, I was going to say that I think that this is one of those departments where, as high elo players, we probably don't appreciate these things as much as a normal casual player might. Because, if you're already someone who plays a lot of quick play or arcade, you're going to enjoy a mode like Mirrorwatch because it's a completely different style of thing. Again, testing the skins is fun. And I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. And the whole package of it, I think, was done really well. I myself didn't play a lot of it because, again, I think as the type of player I am, eventually I'm like, I kind of want to play comp and take this game more seriously. but the like idea of it is really fun too. It's like a mirror universe where if the Overwatch were the bad guys, right? Like, and the other, we swapped them around. How would that go? I think that's really fun. So the concept coming together, like the trying all these new abilities, like I love all of those things. So I think I encourage them to keep doing more things like that. Again, I don't know if that's what Bogur's saying is like how it is, where this might be a much less frequently occurring issue now that they've fired a lot of the PvE developers. Who knows? But I think it's fun, even if it isn't always for me. I think it's a good thing to do and more of it. Custa.
Yeah, I think these modes primarily exist to sell skins, more than anything. Like, just like let people try out the skins. I think it's a fun arcade mode. Like, as I said, it's not supposed to be something that it gets played for a really long time. It's just something that people mess around with. They have fun with it. You do the challenges. People like to collect the challenges and the rewards and titles and stuff like that. I thought it was fun. I agree with Bogur's take that it's all about just trying out new abilities. They can try fun stuff. They can look at what works. Does it actually function in the game? Can we take anything from this as well? I think there's a lot of like little pluses that make it valuable for them to do. And I think it's just always adding new content into the game. That's one thing that Overwatch did terribly in the past, was like it just didn't have anything new coming into the game. So it's just like, if you didn't enjoy playing ranked or quick play, then this game wasn't for you in a lot of ways. And the workshop is very limited in what it has as well. So I don't know. I think overall it's good. And I think their modes are getting better now that they're not focusing on PvE as much. Like, you go back and think, what was the was it
Star
season
Watch,
Star Watch, or like season 2 one, the one where they played the gods one? Like,
oh,
that
the
one,
Battle of Olympus.
yeah, I think that one was really poorly designed. In like, I think the idea was great, and we were like, the idea of this is great, it just wasn't very well executed. I think they're getting better at executing these things every single time, and I think they're finding what people like. They don't like the mode to go too far away from like what quick play is. They like to mix things up. So I think they're doing a good job with these modes, and I agree with you guys. I hope they keep doing them.
Yeah. Any more thoughts on that, gamers? Actually, well, I lied about the final. One more thing, one quick thing. Clash. I feel like I have barely talked about it, and most of us probably barely talked about it, because I doubt any of us go to the arcade and queue Clash. But I also think that all of us have played Clash, I believe, in person too. So, what do we think? Because it's coming soon, next season, right? I believe Clash will come through. So, is this good? 5 CP? Is it better than 2 CP? More CP? Good CP? Yeatle, I go to you again first.
I think it's better than 2CP in the sense that, like, you don't have that obnoxious gameplay where it's like the stall fest on second point, or just everything that made 2CP bad isn't present in Clash, I feel like. But I don't know. I don't feel very strongly about it. Maybe if I played it in comp or something, maybe it's because I've just been playing in like the arcade, you know, arcade players go to arcade. So it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird game mode. I don't hate it. I'll say that. I don't hate it. I'm looking forward to playing the next one.
I don't hate it. There's the poster slogan from Yeatle there.
Yeah.
Bogur?
You know, Clash is the worst game mode ever. I hate Clash. It's bring back 2CP. They
Post the
ruined
video.
this game mode. Yeah, you know, I don't really whatever. I've noticed that a lot of the new game modes they make, there's no loading time anymore, like in CoF or 2CP or Hybrid. It's just like you play, and you lose. You move on, right? Or you win, or you move on, right? So I don't know. It's unique. It's cool, I guess. I know what I know people are gonna complain and say it's the worst game mode ever. People hate change. I don't think it's that bad, right? I need to test out in rank to really have a good opinion of it, because in quick play it's, you know, it's not balanced and stuff. I feel like I've said it before as well. I feel like maybe stomps can happen quite often on it, maybe, but I really need to see it in rank, because you can end a Clash game in like 2 minutes flat. It's kind of funny, but God bless new game modes, right? I'm all up for new game modes.
Custa?
So I actually did a lot of gameplay of Clash because I wanted to make a video about it and talk about it, because we got to try it way back at the Creator Summit, and we were kind of like, there was a lot of concern from us, so like talking about how the game mode plays. And I think they've sort of like done some adjustments on like the way the points work and stuff. I think theoretically it's really fun. I like the push and pull of it. I think the map is really fun. Like it does feel like there's always fights going on. It's better than Flashpoint in the sense that it doesn't feel like you're just running somewhere else for a majority of it. It does feel like you're always running into a fight, and there is consistently fights. My frustration was the average game. So I played a lot of games, and I got my subs to play a lot of games as well. The average game was 7 minutes, which I think is too short on the spectrum of how games are gonna go. The games very rarely go over like 8 to 9 minutes, and that was kind of skewed by the fact that it was open queue, so you could play triple tank 2 support, and things just went on for fucking ever. Biggest frustrations I had with the mode, A and E are almost like impossible to cap. They are so defensive favored with how close the defensive spawn is, to the point that it's almost never worth attacking the last point. And something that Dante identified when we played that back in the day is like, if you're in competitive, you're probably just going to tell your team not to attack. You're probably just going to stay on D. You're going to tell your team not to attack E. Or if you do attack E, you're not going to use resources. You're just going to try and get as many ults out and then just go. And what that leads to is that means every game is going to finish 5-3, 5-4, or 5-3 and 5-4. Because if you ever get 3 points ahead, you just win the game because you've capped the final point. So it feels like the point system is not very exciting to win through points, but it's never really worth it in your best interest to finish the game by capping the point. And if you do finish the game by capping the last point, then the game's probably finished in less than 5 minutes. So it's like, I think there's some pain points there of like, that's not what they want the game to be. So I think I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to adjust some of these changes and how it feels. But as you guys said, until we get into competitive and we really know how it plays back and forth, we're just kind of shooting in the dark.
I think there's a really good insight there. And I think that, as Bogur alluded to, they are making game modes that don't have... Basically, they've done away with like attack and defense, if you think about it, in the last few game modes that they've added. Push, Flashpoint, and Flash. They've done away with the idea that one team is attacking, one team is defending. So there's like a conceptual idea they've gotten rid of. But also, it's very clear that the devs believe that quicker Overwatch is better. Like, this is almost inarguable at this point that the devs believe this because of like everything we've seen. Again, the nature of Flashpoint and Push and the quick play hacked and now Clash. Everything they're doing is like, how can we make Overwatch games shorter? So I know you, Custa, talked about like, well, if the games were like on average 7 minutes, I feel like the biggest issue we have is that we're creating like a disconnect between how long a Clash game is versus how long a hybrid game is, right? Because like these other old we call them archaic game modes, like the original game modes, they can go on for 14, 15 minutes, easily up to 20. Like sometimes if you really get into one of these overtime slogfests, it's like we're looking at like half the time or like double the time, depending on how you want to spin it. Like some game modes take twice as long as others, and I don't know what they're going to do about that. I don't know if there are answers to speed up the old game modes, because it doesn't seem like they're going to slow down the new game modes. I don't think they're going to make the new game modes last for 15 minutes as well. They're clearly pushing towards faster games. So I do think that's like a little bit odd to have everybody's like essentially have a comp SR and a comp rule set that is completely different from match to match. Like one match you win 7 minutes, one match you win in 15 minutes is... It's one thing if that happens because one team is just better. It's another thing that if that happens by definition because of the game mode. So it's an interesting one. I'll be curious to see what the devs feel about that issue overall. Like, do they recognize it? Like, yeah, I know some of the game modes are going to take a lot longer, but it's fine. It just is what it is. To the point of actually balancing it, yeah, I think there are those echoes of 2CP that come through when you push towards that last point, and it's like they spawn out into the fight. Like they literally like spawn, they walk out, and they're here. Like this is kind of ridiculous and kind of a bait. Again, I think Push does this too, where it like baits you into thinking that like you should keep fighting, and the actual strategy is to stop fighting. Like so much of Push is like, don't push, just stop here, like fight in this place. And I that's another like philosophical problem I don't think will be addressed, but maybe should be thought about, is like you're encouraging the player to do the wrong thing in terms of like the strategy of winning. The game is telling you to keep going, but the actual optimal strategy is to not. I also think there's like a little bit of a problem of like, if you win the first cap and then you push them, let's say, you win C, you win B, you push them to A, you're like almost punished for winning the first few, because then they push you back because like the snowball comes. You're up against the ropes on a spawn advantage, like a heavy spawn advantage. So you lose trying to cap A, they cap A, they cap B, and then they're probably snowballing the way to C as well. So like, it again doesn't feel quite right. I don't know. I haven't tested enough to really be empirical about this, but it doesn't feel quite right that like the early winning is almost punished, much again like it used to be with like push counter swapping.
I actually have a relative point to that as well, because the way it can work is first team cap C, then they cap they cap B, and then you go back and forth from B from A. The team that is getting pushed back in defensive, they can actually win the game by capturing C at the very end, and they can win the game without fighting on the other side of the map.
Yeah.
Which feels weird that as a team that's been on the back foot the entire game, you can win without ever really going the other side. Obviously, it's mirrored, so it's like not that crazy of a deal, but it just feels weird the way that the point system pushes you back and forth. And that's what I mean by like it incentivizes you as the offensive team. Like it means you can come back, but it just the point system feels just a little weird. And I preferred if it went to 6 points just so that couldn't happen, I think.
Yeah, I guess the parallel would be like if you pushed it, let's say 10 meters towards them, and then rather than the ball running back to the middle and then pushing again, it'd be like they pushed you 10 meters, and then you pushed them back 5, and it was like, now you win. Like that's like the equivalent of that is like somewhere where you're like, I never even got to their side, but like somehow I've won off of this battle somewhere, right? Like it is a little bit incongruous, but again, we'll see when we get more info on it. Bogur, Yeatle, any more thoughts on Clash?
I don't know. I'm happy for new modes, and it's always hard to judge whether something is good or bad without playing it competitive. Same with Venture, same with Mauga and stuff. I think it's really important to play that mode. But as I said, I don't know. People will complain, and people will still play it, and this, everything will be the same. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I'm excited to play in comp. I'm looking forward to that. And I think touching on the topic you mentioned earlier about the old game modes being a little bit longer, I think they did try to solve that problem with Quick Play Hacked, but the reception was, nah, we don't like it being faster. Yeah.
I mean,
so that might not change.
There's nothing bad with having slower game modes. Sometimes I want to have a quick game. Sometimes I want to, play for 20 minutes. I don't mind it. I don't mind having a slower game in Overwatch. Maybe it's confusing for new players, but I don't know.
I think it's a problem when, like, I think they prefer to have a standardization when you click up Q game, knowing that this will definitely be done in 15 minutes. That's not true in Overwatch. It'll probably be done in 15 minutes, but it could go for 20. And that's, I think, a problem that I think that they're trying to like get, because I think they want to get to like 8 to 12 minutes. That's their like sweet spot of like games.
Yes, I agree. I think if I can try and interpret what I think the devs are thinking, I think they've like honed in on like the market gap for Overwatch is that we're a game that can be done in 10 minutes. Like, and we talked about MOBAs a fair amount in this game, and we inevitably do because that's how Overwatch is. They're like, oh, well, our game's going to be at least 30 minutes. Like, 30 minutes is like, if you stomp them, you're going to win in 30 minutes. I mean, I'm ignoring League because you can fucking forfeit in League, which is such a BS. But let's say in Dota, right, it's like minimum 30 minutes. Long end is like an hour, but you kind of anticipate that. You're like, this game could go on. Whereas I think what they've identified with Overwatch is like, we think people play Overwatch because it's quick. And it like, especially quick play, right? It's like people play it because they can finish it in like 10 minutes. So we want to give them that experience. And as you said, Custa, it's like, well, it could be 7, it could be 20, is like a big problem. Because again, it's not because of the nature of the players in the lobby, it's because of the mode. It's not that, again, that, oh, this is a back and forth game and that's why it's taking longer, or this is a one-sided game, that's why it's shorter. It's that you can have a back and forth game on push that ends faster than a one-sided game on, payload. And that's odd. So, yeah, I think from their POV, they probably want it to be like 10 minutes max. I think they also don't want overtime, right? That's why, like, all these modes don't have overtime modes, because that's another long delay. So, interesting stuff for the devs to ponder, I guess. Any more thoughts then before we move on to concluding thoughts? No? Awesome. All right, well, then we shall head to our final section, which is, what do you guys want them to do in the near future? So this is always the question we kind of roughly ask on the end of the podcast.
Bring back 6v6, 2CP, revert tank changes, bring back, what else?
Mass Mercy Res,
Mass Mercy Res, Hanzo's Scatter Arrow.
Well, yes. I mean, if that is your answer, then that would be your answer. But yeah, essentially, guys, what do you want them to do, let's say for the rest of the season, to kind of up your enjoyment? Because a lot of you kind of expressed that you're bored and you're not, like, there's not been a lot of freshness and excitement. But we're obviously going to have this mid-season patch that's going to shake things up a lot. So any things you want them to maybe think about with an ear to that mid-season patch, we'll go with Bogur
I
first.
got nerf Kiriko, nerf Baptiste. Okay, maybe Kiriko is a bit, but Baptiste 100%, right? And I'm a bit. My main gripe is that no matter what they make or do, the meta always reverts back to Sojourn, Lucio, Kiriko, Tracer, and some Risa or something, right? The tank kind of swaps Queen, Risa, whatever. So that's kind of boring, but that's a high elo issue. I think the biggest thing, and they should learn from this entire thing, is that it's not enough to just release a new hero to make a season exciting. You need to make some other changes. I think these tank changes happening when Venture came out would have made the season a lot more exciting, right? But overall, I think the game is better than before. I just think people get bored from playing the same game over and over again. That's why I'm bored, to be honest. And I think they're headed in the right direction. So I'm overall happy, I think.
I mean, that's very fair. I think the counterpoint that the devs would say is that they need to save some content for the mid-season, because then you'll get bored inevitably 2-3 weeks in regardless. So if they don't have anything big in the mid-season, people will probably play for the first half and not at all for the second half. So they probably were like, oh, a news hero will tide them over until we make these big changes in the mid-season. So that's probably their logic. But Yeatle, I'll take it to you next.
Yeah, I don't really have anything too interesting to say. I'm happy that we're getting a big patch mid-season, and that's all I really want right now. Big patch, change up the game, change things up. That's all.
Any like things you want to earmark is like, oh, maybe don't do this, or maybe don't do that, or actually more of this.
No, just let it happen, and we'll see where it goes. Like if it becomes too extreme, obviously you got the hot fix it, and otherwise, no, I like to see how these changes are big, and it's going to shake things up. So let's go with it. Let's see it. That's how I feel.
It will be very big. I think it will be a huge change to how Overwatch feels. We'll see whether that's good or not. Custa.
So I'm going to go on aggressive, and I'm going to say I would like to see them remove the headshot change from the mid-season patch. I think that's probably where a lot of the frustrations are coming from, but they might want to just full send it and see how it turns out. So all the power to you. I'm just a little worried about it. I agree with Bogur that I think we kind of need to do something to deal with the Tracer Sojourn Lucio Kiriko issue, because everything is always just defaulting back to that. Even if we play dive, right? Like if we go to dive, we're probably going to still play a lot of those heroes, right? Like, so it's not even like it's just a composition thing. My proposed nerf to Kiriko, because Kiriko is not that good at low ranks compared to it is high ranks. So you need a nerf for the high ranks. And I think the best thing that you could do is I would love to see them dramatically reduce the distance of Swift Step. I think that is enabling Kiriko's in a big way to be able to play in these big off angles and not be able to be punished almost ever. You reduce that, all of a sudden the good players who are playing from distance aren't able to do that as freely, and they have to play close towards their team. And I think that solves some of the issues. Other than that, I don't think, I think it's, as Bogur said, it's easy to get bored. We play this game way too much. For the average player isn't getting bored from this game because they barely get opportunities to play as much as we do. So we just like when new things happen all the time. I'm excited for the mid-season patch.
Just want to add, to be fair, not only supports, maybe Sojourn. I think Tracer doesn't need a nerf because the armor changes. I think she's going to be quite nerfed from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Risa already got nerfed. But, just want to say that I don't purely hate supports. But, maybe some supports and some characters need some changes to make things a little bit more fresh.
Yeah, I mean, what you guys are alluding to is just
Love
another...
Cassidy.
Yeah, fuck Cassidy. is just an interesting problem to watch, where it is like these heroes are like almost not played at all in gold, right? Like, would you see anyone running Sojourn, Tracer, Kiriko, Lucio in gold? Like, almost never. Like, you're going to see like Mercy, Lifeweaver, Ana. You're going to see like Junkrat, Reaper, Bastion. And then all of a sudden you get to the pro play. Even in high elo, you don't always see these heroes. Then you get to pro play. All of a sudden people are playing Lucio, which is like unheard of in normal ranked. So it is something I smarter men than I will have to figure out how to unpick that. I don't know. I do agree that like if you want your pro play to be enjoyable and watchable, then you can't just have the same thing. We know we've learned this lesson in Overwatch. Can't have the same thing running the entire time. So something to be done there. And yeah, I guess there's always that balance between changing too much and changing too little, because for a normal player who maybe doesn't even log on that much in the space of a month, like you just got your hang under a few changes in the month, and then all of a sudden there's another huge set of changes. You're gonna be like, what the fuck? I just got my grips around the changes they just made. Now they made a bunch of more changes. So I don't, I don't envy the job of the devs. Like, it is a difficult balance. But I reserve the right to criticize the fuck out of them. So that's what we're gonna do. And yeah, I mean, let's see. I also think that the changes are proposed are too much. They're too many at once. But they're the only people who've played it. We have not. So we're gonna have to default and say that they maybe have some idea that this turns out fine, and then we will critique as we get our hands on them. But any other thoughts, fellas, before I let you get going?
No thoughts, head empty.
That's
No
fair.
thoughts, head empty.
That's usually how it goes. Well, thank you very much for your time and company, guys. So thank you to Yeatle, Custa, and Bogur for joining me and giving me so much of your time. Please show these guys some love. And that is it from us. Peace out.
Bye.